membership.
Wild things about the Church of Christ. But now's your chance to find out for yourself. Starting September the 12th through the 23rd at 7 p.m. each night at the Eden Fairgrounds, you can find out the truth about the Church of Christ. No collections or offerings will ever be taken, and your questions are always welcome. Don't believe the gossip. Only believe the gospel. We hope to see you there.
Know what the Bible says? But I can tell you one thing right now. I wish I had my pastor with me.
Doug Barber?
Yes.
I do too.
Because he'd let you have it. And he'd let you have it with both barrels.
Well, ma'am.
Everything he preaches is strictly the Bible.
See why so many people are angry now. Catch it live nightly on WGSR. Watch talk shows for showtime.
Know what the Bible says? But I can tell you one thing right now. I wish I had my pastor with me.
Doug Barber?
Yes.
I do too.
Because he'd let you have it. And he'd let you have it with both barrels.
Well, ma'am.
Everything he preaches is strictly the Bible.
See why so many people are angry now. Catch it live nightly on WGSR. Watch talk shows for showtime.
Wild things about the Church of Christ. But now's your chance to find out for yourself. Starting September the 12th through the 23rd at 7 p.m. each night at the Eden Fairgrounds, you can find out the truth about the Church of Christ. No collections or offerings will ever be taken, and your questions are always welcome. Don't believe the gossip. Only believe the gospel. We hope to see you there. Wild things about the Church of Christ. But now's your chance to find out for yourself. Starting September the 12th through the 23rd at 7 p.m. each night at the Eden Fairgrounds, you can find out the truth about the Church of Christ. No collections or offerings will ever be taken, and your questions are always welcome. Don't believe the gossip. Only believe the gospel. We hope to see you there.
Know what the Bible says? But I can tell you one thing right now. I wish I had my pastor with me.
Doug Barber?
Yes.
I do too.
Because he'd let you have it. And he'd let you have it with both barrels.
Well, ma'am.
Everything he preaches is strictly the Bible.
See why so many people are angry now. Catch it live nightly on WGSR. Watch talk shows for showtime.
Know what the Bible says? But I can tell you one thing right now. I wish I had my pastor with me.
Doug Barber?
Yes.
I do too.
Because he'd let you have it. And he'd let you have it with both barrels.
Well, ma'am.
Everything he preaches is strictly the Bible.
See why so many people are angry now. Catch it live nightly on WGSR. Watch talk shows for showtime.
Bible says. But I can tell you one thing right now. I wish I had my pastor with me.
Doug Barber?
Yes.
I do too.
Because he'd let you have it. And he'd let you have it with both girls. Let me tell you
Come on, ma'am.
something. Everything he preaches is strictly the Bible.
See why so many people are angry now. Catch it live nightly on WGSR. Watch talk shows for Showtime.
Wild things about the Church of Christ. But now's your chance to find out for yourself. Starting September the 12th through the 23rd at 7 p.m. each night at the Eden Fairgrounds, you can find out the truth about the Church of Christ. No collections or offerings will ever be taken, and your questions are always welcome. Don't believe the gossip. Only believe the gospel. We hope to see you there.
You're watching WGSR 47, serving Reidsville, North Carolina, Southside, Virginia, and Piedmont, North Carolina.
Welcome to this week's edition of NC Transportation Now. I'm Crystal Feldman. Governor Pat McCrory declared some.
Thanks for being with me tonight. I'm Johnny Robertson, and this is What Does the Bible Say? It is a special tent edition. We are live here in the studios in Reidsville, North Carolina. We're broadcasting into basically 5 counties in this area, 2 different states, into some large areas like Greensboro, North Carolina, through Time Warner, Comcast Cable, different setups. And so we're also streaming, I understand. Hope we can check on that to make sure that our stream is going out on YouTube. So essentially, individuals are potentially, I say, they're watching everywhere. And tonight is a big night in our lives as we try to present the truth and try our very best to present it in a way that causes individuals to find themselves closer to God, more in tune with reality. And that's really one of the big problems that we have, is people being in tune with reality. We have the Church of Christ on the one hand, and you know, if we don't watch out, we can end up being just like the Jewish nation when Jesus came along. We can see ourselves as individuals that are in position of having had the truth. Now, this is the way the Jews were depicted by Jesus and by Paul, as having the truth, being the oracle. And we'll just basically read that from Romans chapter 3, verse 1. What advantage then hath the Jew, or what profit is there in circumcision? Well, much in every way, chiefly because that unto them was committed the oracles of God. Well, if you haven't noticed, the Church of Christ is the it is the group of people, it is the church, it is the assembled saved that is in your community constantly saying that we have the truth, we're following the Bible. But what if we're not? What if we decrease and decline just like the Jewish nation did? Then are we any better? Are we in a better position to speak to the people outside than they were? And the answer is no. So on the one hand, we have the Church of Christ, and I have to worry about the Church of Christ. You ever stop to wonder how it is that I'm on these broadcasts night after night? This particular week, we're going to be on for 2 weeks. I mean, this is a all-out blitz. Tonight, we can go till 2 in the morning. And we have no holes barred. And as I mentioned last night, it was last night, we don't answer to anybody but God. But how do we do this? Well, at the end of the day, there are individuals in the churches of Christ throughout the world, literally. We have people that help us from Thailand, from Bangkok, Thailand. These books that we give away for free, Muscle and a Shovel, When the Shovel Breaks, these people buy these by the case load for us and send them over here. And people give us money, and we put on these broadcasts, and we go door to door, and we do all this without ever asking you for a love gift. And that's the way we do this. And so we basically have the Church of Christ on the one side. We're trying to work with the Lord's church, the Church of Christ. And some of you realize in the last year that we've been in just a huge battle against the forces that would turn the Church of Christ into a denomination. On Wednesday night of last week And on Sunday of last week, I did 2 broadcasts where I connected all the dots of all of the loose living, the ungodly behavior trying to turn the Church of Christ, into a Church of Christ, like the Duck Dynasty. Are you aware that the Robertson family, the Duck Dynasty group, those people originated in the Church of Christ? That was the school that everybody wanted me to go to when I was living in Red River County in Texas. Go down to Louisiana, to the school down there, and it's such a great school. Do you know that school doesn't even exist? White's Ferry Road, it doesn't even exist anymore. The White's Ferry Road Church of Christ, it's now a small letter, Church of Christ. And the Duck Dynasty crowd that runs all over the place with the Baptists has wine distilleries, sells wine, cigars, does Dancing with the Stars, just a bunch of ungodly people. They house that building. And so I'm connecting the dots. Where was Willie Robertson? He was in one of our great so-called colleges of the Brotherhood of the Church of Christ. Not a college, in my opinion, that's associated with the Church of Christ at all. They might as well go ahead and just go ahead and get with the denominations where they belong. Then on the other hand, we're fighting at the same time. We're fighting up and down the streets today. I come in contact with young people and I give them a flyer and I ask them, does it make any difference at all what kind of church that you're involved with? And the young people are just like, no, it doesn't make any difference at all. But you know, I can trip them up really quickly. And when I mean trip them up, I mean that I can make them see their contradiction. Can you be a Jehovah's Witness? Oh, no. Can you be a Mormon? Oh, no. Can you be in Satan's church? Oh, no. There's a synagogue of Satan. Oh, no. Well, I thought you said it doesn't matter. Well, then you start discussing with them, and it's a matter of degrees of departure from the Bible. And then we start getting into, well, how far have you all departed in the church you're in? Well, they don't even know, because you know what? They never even stopped to consider that question in the first place. And my show tonight is really about our decline in the entire United States. This afternoon at 4 p.m., I was on the buzz with Charles, and our resident atheist, ex-Marine, homosexual, who has said that he was going to answer us once and for all back in the days when we were doing the Headliner show. And Larry Serber was one of the guests. You remember Troy? Well, Troy is now married. He's somewhere, I'm just going to guess. And you know, Troy, don't get all excited because I miss your age. Somewhere probably in his, I don't know, he's probably going to love me. He's in his late 30s, maybe 40s. You know, I know he's been a Marine. He's been around, and he's bound to be mid 30s. And probably, I'm just going to say, I don't want to insult him, so I'm just going to give him mid 30s. But I would really think that he's probably pushing, I don't even know, mid 30s. Well, he's married, and he wouldn't tell how old his hubby is. And we had this show today, and what we did, at least in my mind, is we showed the decline of our nation. And that's what I want to talk about tonight as we go into this. Now, I'm basically going to tell you that I have another video that's sitting on hold. And this video is a expose of a college president in our brotherhood who is actually going to be, I'm going to say he epitomizes the political machinery, the hypocrisy, the political activity that goes on behind the scenes. So if you are a person who is associated with Freed Hardeman and you're watching our show, you might want to call one of your friends and start sharing this around, because we're going to expose one of the higher ups tonight in a tape, in an interview that I did, that actually demonstrates the level of unbelievable behavior that takes place in the arena when you have successful people coming into the same arena. Now, everybody in this arena, get this, not everybody in this arena is playing the same way. There are some people in this arena that are playing such a horrible game, like the powerful people in Jesus' day. Do you really think that Jesus cared about the political people in his day? John 2:24. If you think he did, you need to read John 2:24. Now remember, this is coming up. We have till 2 o'clock tonight to get our account across. I've got Caleb sitting on the wings here. When I run out of gas, he's coming on with an expose about the First Baptist Church, exposing John Fulcher and Matt. Okay, Micah knows his last name. We talked about it a little bit last night, but Caleb actually has the video footage or the audio footage, and the exposure in Martinsville is, I believe, is going to be phenomenal. This is the biggest Baptist church. This is the entrenched, dirty, old money people. And I don't mean they're dirty. I'm talking about their money. It's this old money that's just, I mean, it's been laying around. It's moldy, mildewed. This is where the upper crust is. Methodists. We exposed the Methodists a long time ago when we were talking about their big priced organs, and I can't think of her name right now. The one of the Methodist members that had a show that on Channel 6, and I just keep wanting to say Hilda, but I know her name's not Hilda. Elka Cheshire. You know, the things that we learned about the Methodist Church. Well, now it's the big Baptist Church in Martinsville. So that's what we're up against. And so we hope that you'll stay tuned. We also hope that you'll go to our Facebook and look at the link that's up there and share that link. Let me make sure. Did I post that? I never posted it. All right. I'm just now posting the link on my Facebook. So this actually, was it posted anywhere else? I just posted mine. So if you're a person that's watching on Facebook, you're getting this post right now for the link. And so we hope that you are about to key in, and we're really going to get started with our other part of the broadcast. Now, what we're showing, we're going to basically start with the decline of our nation, and then we're going to move over to the decline of the Church of Christ. Now, as I said, this was a broadcast that went on earlier. This is at 4 p.m. This gentleman right here, he is offering himself up as really what the nation has become. And because we're so tolerant, he is an individual that gets to come out and be in the public's eye, and he's offering himself up as the alternative for what we've been accepting in the past. Now, folks, I want you to know I am not a part of the establishment. I have never been a part of the establishment religion. The establishment religion today, I think that Jesus would tell them they're going to burn in hell. I think that when Jesus came on the scene, he saw all of these powerful individuals who had taken religion and they had used it to their own gain and glory. And he just basically rejected them. And he went to the common people, Mark chapter 12, verse 27. And that's exactly what I'm saying today. We're in a dilemma today where the established individuals are actually not the people that we want to be a part of. At Mark chapter 12, verse 37. We don't want to be a part of this. Never have been a part of it. And so we've basically been telling you all along that we're not a part of that. And so we basically are the ones who are standing up. I mean, you do not see anybody else in our area who gets on television and takes this on in the public eye. I haven't seen anybody. I see some of the news stations, some of the conservative political news stations, they're taking on some of this stuff. You know, they're reporting about the bathroom law in North Carolina and how the governor is taking hits from every direction. All these people are leaving North Carolina. This is where we're broadcasting, North Carolina. All these people are leaving Greensboro, North Carolina with their sports events and going to other states because the transgender people can't go in the bathroom with whomever they think that they are today. And it's just, it's just ridiculous. So, Caleb, can she use a phone and actually get a big tent, the LGBT tent of some sort, and post it to my Facebook, and then let me have it as a just a picture for me to use as illustration. If you find it, just post it to me on Facebook, and then tell me you posted it if you find it. So here's where we are. Now I'm fixing to start, and I've been trying to work on this. Just let me tell you this. We've got other events going on. So as I mentioned, we started door knocking this morning at 9 or at 9:30. I went out door knocking with these guys. Then at 4, we go on live with this show. And here it is, 11. We had a tent tonight where we actually went out for a gospel sermon at the tent. That was at 7. And we've been trying to piece this information together. Little time this afternoon, really no time after this show. I went straight home at 8, straight to the tent. We left the tent and we were trying to put this together. We get down here, and before you know it, it's 11 o'clock. And so I'm having to kind of do this in a fashion that's not pleasing to me, but I want to give you the gist of what I'm saying. This is how we started. This is, and you know, this is really the dilemma that we face when we don't have any standard. I'm on with this gentleman named Troy, and as we start talking about a woman named Ramona. Now listen, folks, I have to bring you up on this. Ramona Hines to our area is Jennifer Flowers to Bill Clinton, or Monica Lewinsky to Bill Clinton. I'm saying Little Martinsville, this woman used the same lawyer that Bill Clinton had with Jennifer Flowers. That's how big this thing got. Charles, what were you on in New York? What were you on in New York? Maury Povich, actually, and
We did Oprah, yeah.
I'm learning as we go. They went on Oprah with this. So yesterday, he revisits Ramona after about 20 years to see what she's up to. She had actually left her husband, took up with a gentleman who was running another television station. They had an affair. It was just basically played out. They talked about their sex life right on television 20 years ago. You thought it was just today when we have all this crazy stuff like that you see on reality TV. No, it was playing out in Martinsville, Virginia. Right before that, one of the pastors in town was marrying a 16-year-old in his church while he still was married to a 40-something-year-old woman. This was all going on in Martinsville. And so yesterday on this show, they revisited Ramona. Basically, Ramona has been through just all kinds of stuff. And we have Troy on today. Remember, Troy is a homosexual. He is an atheist, and he's an ex-Marine. And so he is on the program today, and he's asked the question. Okay, I don't see a message from her. Did you send me a private Facebook message?
She just tagged you and it puts your notifications.
Okay, hold on just a minute. No notifications at this point. Is it from you or her?
Give it a second.
I'm trying to get a picture here, and okay, that's great. Oh, that's great. It went away. Okay, y'all hold on just a second. I need to get a picture here. A piece of clip art. Copy. Let's see. It won't let me copy. Okay, that's good enough. I'll just use it from right there. All right. So what was I saying? We're saying Ramona was on yesterday. Here's the ex-Marine, atheist, homosexual, who's come on once before to answer me several times, as a matter of fact, to take us down. And he's back today. And Charles asked him, what do you think about Ramona? And he says she's a bit slutty. Now, here's our dilemma, folks. If you are a person who's in his shoes, you just got married to another man in June, how do you call somebody a slut? I mean, how do you look at Ramona? And I mean, what does he say? Well, I'm not going to run around on my man. He's a man. I'm not going to run around on my man. And where is this law? Where is this code book that he's operating out of? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Okay, you're over here. And then another guy calls in and says, well, what he's doing is no worse than any of the sins that I'm committing. This guy says this from the call-in. We'll try to find that in just a moment. But yet, wait a minute. Now, this one guy calls in, his name is Mike Elder, and he says, well, what Troy's doing marrying another man is no worse than what I've done. And he tries to say that Matthew chapter 10, that Jesus said, dust the dust off of your shoes, and you just basically let your peace come back to yourself. Well, that's a hodgepodge of a quote of that verse. That is not what it says. It actually says in the next verse that it's going to be worse for that town than it was for Sodom and Gomorrah. And the peace that's associated with that has nothing to do with that. It is actually, the peace will return to you if a house is actually taking you in. If a house be worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it be not worthy, let your peace return to you. And you dust off your feet. And then notice what Jesus says. It shall be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. And the day of judgment that is actually going to come quickly, there's a judgment that's going to be when the Lord returns in the air, but there is also a judgment that's going to come upon the Jews. And it's going to be in their lifetime, and they are going to be miserably destroyed. Now, I don't know where he gets this idea that nothing's going to happen to this group of individuals that didn't listen to Jesus. And he's basically telling me that I should just dust my feet off of Troy and just let my peace return to myself. Well, okay, let's just give him that for a moment. But Troy is calling Ramona a slut. Have you ever heard the pot calls the kettle black? And, you know, they weren't cooking with gas back then, my friends. They were cooking with wood. And when you cook like that, the pot and the kettle get black from the soot. And so the idea, you know, sometimes young people can't use these idioms. The idea of saying the pot calling the kettle black, well, the pot's black is coal. What in the world is it doing calling the kettle black? It's saying both of them are equally stained. And I'm saying this is not a racist statement about Troy either. So I don't even want to hear anybody calling in and saying, well, you saying that because Troy is black? I don't play that race game with y'all. I'm not worried about any of that. I'm just telling you, don't even go there because we're not going to put up with it. This is Troy calling her a slut when he's actually over here breaking every moral law that has to do with, or as many moral laws as she did. Now, how does that work? Well, you're about to get to see it, because I'm surely you're wondering, how does this guy who's an atheist get to call her a slut? I mean, do atheists have a code book that we don't know about that says this behavior over here is slutty and his behavior? What's he been doing with this guy before he got married to him? Weren't they fooling around? He's been talking about their sex forever. So where in the world does she get off being slutty and he's not slutty? Well, here's the answer. And I'm going to let you listen to him actually saying that. So take a listen.
Wait a minute, I was saying, you said he's a slut?
Okay, so Matt, you know that it's the volume is down on this video. I didn't have time to chop it up and bump it up.
Why would he ask that question?
Yeah. And any feedback that we get about
No, when you're going back to morals and things like that.
Tolerance, yeah, just the basic tolerance. I mean, let's just throw morals.
that's as far as I've got.
We don't have a word moral anymore, so we're going to tolerate. How far are we going to tolerate?
Right. And you know, that's kind of where you draw the line.
Well, that is the issue.
Okay, I hear it outside.
Is really it has opened the door for everything, and you don't even have to discuss.
Do you see any good in that, or do you see all bad?
I say that I see that it's taking us just down a total decline. I mean, that's one of the reasons I brought the psychiatric manual.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the Bible for the Psychiatric Association, American Psychiatric Association.
Right.
And in their manual, they're basically removing stigmas as we go. This is the fourth one. I have all four of them.
Yeah.
And I mean, who do we go to as far as to take our psyche and say, who's the law? It ends up being the Psychiatric Association. I mean, if you were to commit a crime, Charles, and you could convince everybody, or just let me say me, I could convince them that I was insane.
All right.
Did I get off?
Troy has come on the show and said he's a gay American. Now, I want to ask you, because let's talk about because now in the state of Virginia, he can get married.
Mm-hmm. I am married.
You are married?
Yes.
I did not know that.
June the 13th. So I'm newly married, fresh off my honeymoon.
Wow, I did not know.
Yeah, legally married, yes.
Awesome. You got the ring and everything.
Got the ring, got my papers and everything.
Then does that make it better?
No. I mean, that basically all we're doing now when we talk about the marriage situation is we're just sectioning off one more step, and we're pretending that we're not in a particular slide. I mean, do you see the slide?
Yeah, but I would think that you would at least.
So here we are, folks. We're saying that we've been declining for quite some time. And every time we have a decline, something else becomes normal. And it's just like we start talking about it in normal terms, like them getting married. We tolerate shows that we would have never tolerated. Right here on this station, we have had big time discussions about Brokeback Mountain. Now, I was out of the country when Brokeback Mountain came out. And you know what? Brokeback Mountain broke the back of the tolerance meter. I mean, really, once you got two homosexual cowboys, it's just like, I mean, do you know cowboys? These guys are, I mean, I used to be in the rodeo circuit, and you just don't see these guys meshing except on the Village People. There's a cowboy in that song in the Village People. So you had everybody lumped in there together. But when Brokeback Mountain came out, it was just like, okay, if two cowboys are involved together, then we'd just tolerate anything. And, that was a major step right there. I was out of the country, as I said. James and some of the brethren here, they boycotted the theater when it was on and talked about it. And we just keep tolerant. And now we have the guys at Brokeback Mountain getting married. You might as well say everybody's getting married. And what are we doing? We're just continuing down this slide, and you see anything and everything. Mattel comes out with a Barbie called Bratz. And the Barbie has accessories for a 5 to 8 year old that are, peekaboo lingerie and different things like that. What does a 5-year-old know about lingerie? You're sexualizing a child's doll. And, the bigger girls are using Barbie, but then you have the Bratz doll, and it's more like, you start them out early with these little dolls, these little Bratz dolls that give them the idea of sexuality before you even become a teenager. You have companies that are making thongs for 5 to 8 year old children. What girl? And they have underwear that has logos on them like wink, wink. What 5-year-old? Why would you have a 5-year-old in a pair of panties that as she walks by, it says wink, wink at her panties? You see, it's just the sexualization of of our nation gone wild. Then you have the Kinsey Report movie comes out. And basically Kinsey tells us that 1 in 10 individuals in the United States basically was homosexual all along. I have a hard time convincing individuals that Kinsey was doing his research in prisons, but I know it's the case. Not only that, I'm telling you this, friends, eventually, mark my words, eventually one of the three of us is going to find the book that the co-writer of Homosexuality in Males, the co-writer with Kinsey, actually wrote another book about children, basically your adolescent age children. His name is Pomeroy. I don't think there's enough individuals in the United States to hide all these books. And once I get my hands on that book, Pomeroy was actually encouraging adolescent kids, boys, to have sex with their animals. And he is the co-writer of the Kinsey book, The Human Sexuality of the Male. Now, once I get that, we're just going to, we called every library between here and Roanoke. And I think 6 said they had it. By the time we got there to get it, it was off the shelves. What? We ring you up and say, I'd like to see, I forget the name of the book now. We'd like to check that book out. Oh yeah, we got it. Then we get there. Oh, well, we don't have it. Now, it could be the case that individuals in our community gobble those things up and never turn them back in. I mean, a lot of people do things like that. Can you imagine reading that book? Well, there's another book that I'm about to get. It's called 1 in 10. And it's actually preferred reading for California youth, adolescents. And it's the storyline is about a 16-year-old girl who has lesbian sex with her 24-year-old music teacher. It's actually suggested reading material for school-age kids in California. This is the kind of stuff that is the norm. So I'm just simply saying here, we're in a slide, we're in a decline, and we're about to see argumentation. Now, I'm gonna give you a heads up. Today, I did something that you'll be amazed. I said, okay, for argument's sake, the Bible's out. For argument's sake, morals are out. I just want to talk about common sense and logic. That's what I said to these gentlemen on the show. So we're going to move ahead a little bit, and we're going to listen to how this plays out.
Respect that more. Because it's more in that traditional thing that you seem comfortable with.
No, I thought you actually recognized. I went down with you to the guys that were down there boycotting in North Carolina. Remember those magistrates?
Yeah.
Remember, I went down and stood up to them and said,
"Can you go out in the lobby
saying that divorce
and check and see how our audio is?"
You let that step
Not you.
slide. See, that's my point. Once we decline, they don't do anything about divorce. So why in the world would Troy care what the magistrate said?
See if you can actually hear the.
Your line is more connected to traditional values. And what he's doing, getting married, it's more traditional. It's saying it's obviously saying you want to live with one person.
Yeah, I want to live with one person. I choose to spend the rest of my life with it. And I didn't do it for anybody's morals, anybody's beliefs, or religion. It's for me.
Okay, here we come. Here we come with argument number 1. Now remember, I've given in for argument's sake. The Bible's out. I'm not going to say you have to do what the Bible says in this particular show. I'm not going to say you have to have a moral code. And that show in this interview, I'm giving them that much ground. Can you believe that Johnny Robertson said the Bible's gone? The moral code is gone. We're just going to take your words and we're going to see what happens when we take your words and turn them right back around on you. So here we go. Listen to his argumentation.
This is what makes me happy.
Gotcha.
So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. In the end,
Right.
This was wrong. And when you let that step slide, see, that's my point. Once we decline, they don't do anything about divorce. So why in the world would Troy care what the magistrate?
What if that is the true question? In the end, it's only one person I need to answer to, and that's God. Nobody. So why does anybody even worry about what I'm doing? This is for me. It's not for anybody to talk about or get all upset about or worry about. It's more right or it's more wrong or whatever. It's not their ground. It's not into their business. Really.
See how that goes? Let's take the Bible out of it. Let's just say we don't even have a Bible. Let's take morals out of it. His basic mantra right now is what makes me happy. Now, where are we going with that, Charles? Who else gets to say what makes me happy? Everybody.
That's God. Nobody.
I don't have any more volume.
Worry about what I'm doing. This is for me. It's not for anybody to talk about or get all upset about or worry about. It's more right or it's more wrong or whatever. It's not their ground. It's not into their business. Really.
See how that
And I didn't do it for anybody's.
They declined. They didn't.
It's saying it's obviously saying you want to live with one person.
Yeah, I want to live with one person. I choose to spend the rest of my life with. And I didn't do it for anybody's morals, anybody's beliefs, or religion. It's for me and me only. This is what makes me happy.
Gotcha.
So it doesn't matter. It doesn't.
This is what makes me happy. Okay. We don't have a Bible anymore. I give up. We don't have a moral code. We're just down to it makes me happy. You see where we're going with this, folks? This is his argument. Now, I let him make his argument. And this was his basic argument. Now, once we started talking about it, he's going to change his basic argument. He's going to amend it because he knows if you get to be happy over here, what about these folks? Can you see that? This is a tent. Are you with me here? This is the LGBT tent. Where's the P? Where's the P here? Are you not getting the P? Where is the P in this tent? LGBTP. You may realize that they've put a Q on there. You used to didn't say queer, but now they've owned the word. It's really, as kids we were taught, if somebody is insulting you, then you really don't have to take that insult. You can just, you don't have to fight about it. You can just own it. You can just say, okay, well, so what? And that's what they've done. They've just decided that, okay, LGBTQ, queer. They've added a Q, but where's the P? That's what I want to know. Where is the P? Because the P is now actually just as tolerated as the LGBTQ. Oh, you didn't know that? I hold in my hand, and we're going to get into this in just a minute on the show, on that other show, but this is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the Mental Disorder, 4th edition, called the DSM number 4. This is the Bible for the American Psychiatric Association. If you have a psychiatrist, can I tell you something? He is diagnosing you out of this book. You may think that he's real smart and Sigmund Freud-like while he's scratching his chin and rubbing his head, and that he's coming up with some, alternative for your behavior so that he can help you. But he really has been schooled in what the American Psychiatric Association says is mental disorder. He will give you your basic problems and he will give you your diagnosis out of this book. This is the law. And this is the 4th edition. What do you mean the 4th edition? Well, this is kind of like denominationalism. Denominations start off with a manual, like the Baptists. They've got a manual over the 1500s, and then you get to the 1800s, and that dude doesn't even look like the one that started out in the 1500s. Why? Because they're changing the rules all the time. Mormon church, man, the Mormon church, they used to wouldn't let a black person in. Now they've changed that. Well, the Diagnostic Manual, it's a man-made article also. And in the 1st edition, do you know that homosexuality was a deviancy? If you were homosexual, you were one sick dude. in the first DSM. I have them. I have 4 of these. And the Psychiatric Association had a fight within themselves because so many of the psychiatrists were actually homosexual themselves. And in the 70s, they decided that they would walk out of the convention if the next DSM didn't change and take homosexuality off of the deviancy list. In other words, you were no longer sick if you're a homosexual. No science, no data, no. Just individuals acting up. You got a website out here called Act Out. And that's how the homosexual agenda works. They act out and they make arguments like, why can't we be happy? All you heterosexual people are happy. Why can't we be happy? Well, my question is, where's the P? What do you mean, where's the P? Well, let me just turn over here to our ever-changing psychiatric manual. And on page 527, we have disorder number 302.2, and it is pedophilia. Now, I'm asking the LGBT folk to put a P, LGBT, put a P out there. Why? Because the psychiatric community has changed the diagnosis for the pedophile community, and the LGBT folk won't let them in the tent. And you say, well, what do you mean that they've changed the diagnosis? Well, let me just read from the diagnostic part, where you actually tell somebody if they're sick or not. Okay, you got a pedophile, he's on the couch. Now remember our argument. It makes me happy. So this dude is happy. He's a pedophile. He's happy. He's getting satisfaction. Troy's happy. He's getting satisfaction. And so you get this dude on the couch. And so the doctor says, diagnostic criteria 302.2, pedophilia, letter C. Is this person at least 16 years, age 16, and at least 5 years older than the child or the children that he's involved with? So we're basically talking about this person that's at least 16-year-old or older. Now, in this show, and our plan is that at some time tonight, we hope to go ahead and get this entire show up on YouTube, if we can get YouTube running that long. Let me just ask the man in charge, if at the end of the evening, can we actually put this as a go into your system and put this entire Buzz show on and let it go on? Yeah, let it go on our YouTube so that all of this is together.
We'll work on it.
Okay, all right, that's a good answer. We'll work on it. So we're a work in progress here. So basically, he's saying, I want to be happy. So you got this guy, number 302.2. He's on the couch and he says, Doc, I'm feeling happy. Well, the doctor says, well, here's what I need to know. Has this fantasy or sexual urge or behaviors, has it caused clinically significant distress? We have to page back over here and find out, well, how distressed is distress before a psychiatrist says you're distressed? Has this caused you clinically significant distress, or is this fantasy or this urge or this behavior, has it caused you an impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning? And he says, no, doc. And the doctor says, well, dude, you're fine. If it's not causing you stress, if it's not bothering your social activity. Now listen, when we talk about our social activity, all you have to do is find a culture that is tolerant of your behavior. And all of a sudden your social problems are over. And that's what Troy has done. Troy has found a group of individuals to associate with that are tolerant of himself and his behavior. And he's happy. It doesn't bother him anymore. Now, when I first met Troy, he's talking about killing himself. Now, listen, folks, don't put that off on us. Alcoholics talk about killing themselves. Drug addicts talk about killing themselves. Rapists talk about killing themselves. All kinds of individuals, murderers talking about killing themselves. It's not my fault that a person wants to kill themselves because their behavior isn't satisfying them. It's giving them the wrong results. It used to be that the psychiatric community would say, if you keep behaving in the way that you're behaving and you're getting unsatisfying results, you're insane if you keep doing it. But see, all of a sudden now the Christian community is responsible for Troy wanting to kill himself. But see, Troy's not that way anymore. Was that 2 years ago when we first started doing the headliners? A couple of years ago, I mean, he told me flat out that if he were not a homosexual already and it wasn't causing his family distress, he would kill himself. He said, it's bad enough that my family's having to deal with me being homosexual, but a psychomaniac too who kills himself. He said, I just don't want to put that on my family. But now he's married. He's happy. Doc, I'm happy. Well, guess what? They changed this diagnostic a long time ago in the psychiatric community. That behavior that he's involved in, they said there's nothing wrong with that anyway. A lot of the psychiatrists were that way too. So now we got the pedophile, number 302.2. He's on the couch and he's saying, hey, doc, I can fix this social problem. How do you do it? I find new friends. Well, where are you going to find these friends? Well, I'm actually going way over the cliff here, but I'm just saying there's an organization out here that will support you. It's called NAMBLA. Really? North American Man-Boy Love Association? That's right. I mean, if you're feeling distressed about yourself, and if you're a pedophile, if you're acting on this behavior, here you are. You have fantasies, sexual urges, or behaviors, and it's bothering you because you can't find a social community. Listen, folks, this is how things are happening today. People who are messed up get on the internet and they find friends that are messed up. Why do you think all these kids are killing each other? They get on the internet and they find other kids that are talking about killing each other. They find kids that make bombs. They find kids that sneak guns into school, and they talk to each other, and they find themselves a network in a community where they feel comfortable, and they then are happy. If it makes me happy, then there's nothing wrong with it. Okay, we got this dude. Now he's fixed with his social order. It's not causing him any distress. I mean, he's really enjoying it. The internet's full of places he can go. He has new friends now. So he's not being bothered. What about occupation? Well, he just keeps it to himself. I mean, he's working with a bunch of potheads and drunks and folk in churches that act as crazy as he is, except for this disorder that we're talking about to the doctor. So, I mean, at work, hey, everybody's talking about sex. You think we don't know what goes on at work? When Hooker Furniture was here, we had 3 guys that worked at Hooker Furniture. They were forever coming in and telling us about the women. These were guys. They were talking about the women that would get tattoos in places that I'm not even going to mention, and they'd be wanting to show these guys their tattoos at work, just talking about all kinds of lewd stuff, just unbelievable behavior. So this guy that we're talking about, number 302.2, he's talking about occupational problems. Doc, this is not causing me any trouble at work. Well, okay, then any other important areas of functioning that you're having a problem with? No, sir. Guess what? You're fine. Really? DSM, number 4, has just tolerated pedophilia. You cannot debunk this. It's impossible. This is exactly what the psychiatric community did with homosexuality 25 years ago. It's the exact way. It is the exact amount of tolerance that was given. They just changed the diagnostics just a little bit. And they changed how the doctor talked to you on the couch. Is it bugging you? Is it bugging people around you? Is it causing you trouble at work? No, doc, I'm fine. Well, you're good to go. This is the Bible for this community, and it makes Troy happy. Well, let's see how Troy deals with that argument. See, that's really the test. Once your argument gets thrown out there, and then you have to taste it. In other words, somebody kicks it back on you. How does the argument work? How is that going for you? Well, I tell you what, Troy may not be having any trouble in himself, stressed. He may be having fine and dandy with his social life, and occupationally, the people he works with, I know some of the people he works with, he got these folks scared to death. They think he is a psychomaniac. And I've been in situations with him where he's threatened me several different times at the studio in front of people. This guy is okay at work. He's got people thinking that he's a raging maniac. Women scared to death of this dude. So he's good to go at work. But when he comes on the buzz, he's got trouble. How do I know he's got trouble? Listen, folks, I got text from this dude on my phone where he threatens to have me in a lawsuit if I ever talk to him again. Are you kidding me? We're going to play this show in its entirety after we get off the air tonight. So it'll be up on YouTube. This guy actually called me out. He wanted to be on the show with me. He was the one guy who could answer me. Now, I met him one time before that, and I didn't know who he was. He was kind of creepy back then. He scared me a little bit. You know, I go into these settings where these denominational people are hating on me, and Geno Jennings came to town. And this dude was outside of Geno Jennings' organization up there. It used to be by the Hampton Inn. I can't remember, Quality Inn or whatever it is. up there right down the hill from there. And Gino had that place rented, and this guy was outside. And I you know, he's beefed up. I thought he was in security. And I tried to talk to him. He wouldn't say anything. He knew exactly who I was. I just didn't know. I'm trying to talk to him. I said, Gino in? Not a word. You know, just, you know, security type. They don't talk. They just be looking tough. He's up there, and he's wanting to get a hold of Gino Jennings because, man, if you want to talk about somebody that's down on homosexuality, it's Gino Jennings. Am I right? Y'all know Gino Jennings. He's up in Philadelphia. We've had several rounds with Gino Jennings. He used to be on channel 18. I don't know for sure if he is or not.
Yeah,
he's still on 5 o'clock. So let me move him over so I can get back in the picture for the YouTube folk. I've been out of the picture probably the whole time. That's okay. You didn't call in. You didn't tune in to look at me. So I met him at that point, and I never knew that I would run into this guy again. He comes walking into the studio, and I'm like, man, you were at that Gino Jennings. I thought you were security. No, he was there basically to try to say something to Gino and answer him, but he couldn't do that. So he called me out, and he's happy except when he's on the buzz and except when he's in contact with us, because his argument is no argument at all. Continue to listen to the argument that he makes about being happy. He's going to change it.
Doesn't matter. In the end, you know, if I was to go on that religious road or whatever, in the end, when I go to be judged, I'm going for myself. Nobody else can speak for me being judged.
Right.
Only one person I got to answer to, if that is the true question. In the end, it's only one person I need to answer to, and that's God. You know, nobody, you know, so why does anybody even worry about what I'm doing? This is for me. It's not for anybody to talk about or get all upset about or worry about. It's more right or it's more wrong or whatever. It's not their realm. You know,
Yeah.
It's not into their business. Really.
See how that goes? Let's take the Bible out of it. Let's just say we don't even have a Bible. Let's take morals out of it. His basic mantra right now is what makes me happy. Now, where are we going with that, Charles? Who else gets to say what makes me happy? Everybody does. Let's say we don't have a Bible. I'm fine with that. We'll just take the Bible out. Now we're going to be happy.
Maybe he says he doesn't want the Bible in his life.
Fine. I said fine.
I don't.
Fine. So we now are ruled by what makes us happy. Now, Charles, we all can sit here and say that we're done with the Bible. It's caused all these issues, but I don't think anybody who's listening to this show today will say what makes us happy, because, man, what makes the next person happy is going to be way up the scale.
When you go to what restaurant do you eat at?
Most of the time, right now, I eat at Starbucks.
But most people, when they go eat, they eat what makes them happy.
Yeah, I actually eat what I can. You know.
I mean, a lot of people's thinking is what makes them happy.
Well, I know
it's
that.
to the level of this. It's not just what makes me happy. As long as it's not hurting anyone else, why should it matter?
Who is it hurt?
Okay. He sat there and realized that making him happy, that's not a good argument. Because if Troy gets to be happy, how come everybody else doesn't get to be happy? I mean, there's a bunch of people that are doing a bunch of stuff, and they're not getting to do it. But Troy is getting his cake, and he's getting to eat it too. He is happy. But I'm looking at this tent, and I'm looking at the psychiatric manual, and the doctor saying, if pedophilia is not bugging you, if you're happy, then you're fine. Listen, folks, it's on page 527. Get on the internet, pull this up, go to 527 and look up 302.2. He's a character, let me tell you. And he's happy. And according to this, he's good to go. But he can't get in the tent. Where's the P? LGBT P. Now, I can tell you what, you get on the internet and you'll find some very unhappy people on 302.2 page. You know why? Because they are saying that Troy is selling them out. You guys got in the tent, LGBT, transsexuals. Now, see, we used to argue on this very show that the transsexuals, before it was all said and done, were going to take over the bathrooms. And everybody's saying, oh, no, that's changing the subject. You know, stay on the subject. That's a whole nother. They're under the tent now. The transsexuals right up in there. Everybody's dissing North Carolina because people in North Carolina, they just think that the bathroom is sacred. You know, there's just one place that's sacred in life, and these transgenders shouldn't be able to get into the bathroom with the wrong gender. Well, then they start saying there is no such thing as gender. The doctors assigned you a gender. You know, I can say I'm a 6-foot female Asian if I want to because I feel like it. We'll try to get on a basketball team, women's basketball team, female 6-foot Asian, try to play basketball with your 4'5" self. It's not going to happen. But you can get into a bathroom at Target if you think you're a woman, but you're really a man. And you know what? North Carolina says no, everybody's dissing them. We told you this was going to happen. And it's happening in the schools in California. I mean, it's already down to the point where in California, you can't even dictate that the boys are not in the girls' bathroom because the boy feel like a girl today, dressed up like a girl. It's happening in Martinsville, just nobody doesn't want to tell it. I know some school bus drivers. I know other individuals that are talking about what goes on in the Martinsville school system. We're not exempt. But my point is, we said it was going to happen. It's happening. And I'm saying to you that there's going to be a P in this tent before it's all said and done. It's already happened in the manual. And see, that's the thing is our country is spoon-fed by the media. Do you think Huffington Post has told you about the change in the DSM-4? Absolutely not. This all is subtle. How did we get Brokeback Mountain in the theater? It didn't just one day somebody said in the middle of all kinds of regular behavior, let's just throw out 2 cowboys that are homosexuals. Oh no, it was a step at a time, subtle. And then the next thing you know, we're on a roller coaster ride and we're declining. So here we are. You can't disprove this. It's on page 527. I dare you to look it up and say that I'm wrong. 302.2, their diagnosis for their sickness. If it's not bugging them, if they're not having trouble socially, they found new friends, accept them, and it's not causing problem in the occupational area where you work, then you're good to go. Happiness, open bliss. The only problem is you can't get under the tent. You know why? Because America's not ready for you yet. Will America be ready for it? You better believe America's going to go for it. Did you ever believe that there would be a LGBT tent? You know you didn't. If you're my age, you know that you never dreamed that this would be an open tent and it would be celebrated in parades all over the United States. And there would be lawsuits against you if you speak out against it. I'm still speaking out against it. But you know what? I'm still speaking out against divorce. You know, when the magistrates were talking about quitting because they were going to have to marry homosexuals, I was down there saying in North Carolina, hey guys, what was wrong with you when people were divorcing for the wrong reason and they were marrying individuals that the Bible said that it wasn't lawful to be their wives? You weren't saying anything, and you were opening the door for these individuals to call you the hypocrites that you are. And guess who's leading the role on that? Jerry Falwell. 1999, Jerry Falwell changed his biblical statement. That's as bad as the psychiatric community. Charles is always telling these folks, Johnny doesn't like Baptists. I don't like any of these folk. You know why? They changed the rules in the middle of the game. Why? Because people want to be more tolerant of misbehavior. I'm not saying these folks caused this at all. These folks are a product of the decline in our nation. Marriage went out the window. In 1961, person in 1,000 got a divorce, and now it's 1 in every 2. That's a decline. How long is that, y'all? 1960 to now? That's 52 years, 56 years. In 56 years, we went from 1 divorce in 1,000 marriages to 1 out of 2. And guess who was letting these other marriages take place? The magistrates. These folks looking at it and they say, you divorce folk, you fornicating adulterers, y'all are happy. You get to eat your cake, have your cake and eat it too. And what were they saying? Man, it's the same argument. I've heard it in the churches how many times? In the church I was in, I just found out lately that the men who were running this church back in Red River County, Texas, actually said the same thing about my uncle and aunt, who were both adulterers getting married. And they said, well, it'll keep the children happy. They've had children in this wedlock that wasn't lawful in the first place. Neither one of them had a right to divorce their mates. They didn't do it the way the Bible said, but now they're married and they got children. Let's keep everybody happy. Hey, Troy, he's got that argument down, and there's not anything y'all can do about it. There's not one thing you can do about it unless you go back and straighten yourself out, and you're not going to do it. And the churches of Christ, they're going down the same trail. You've got Churches of Christ right over here in Reidsville, calls itself a Church of Christ. That's where the people who are messed up in marriage go. They changed the rules. Doug Dynasty, they changed the rules over there too. Why? It's you change your social. If you're misbehaving and your social community isn't tolerating you, that's going to mess you up in the psychiatric community. So you got to change your surroundings, and that's what they do. They change the entire church, folks. We're nothing like we used to be. In some ways, that's good. I mean, we've misbehaved in some ways. People have used the Bible to keep different races down. There's just all kinds of things, but we've got to pay attention. So basically, I'm saying that Troy amended his argument because he knows that argument won't work. I'm happy, but the P is not in the tent. And these folks are not happy. You get on the internet and you'll find out they are calling this group sellouts. You bunch of sellouts, you traitors. Y'all got in the tent and y'all all happy, and we still out here in the cold. And we're fine with ourselves. Psychiatric community says we're okay. We're not sick anymore. We're not deviating from the norm. We're just as happy as we can be, but we're not really happy till we get in the tent. And we're basically saying that he's not happy either when he's on the buzz. Listen to what he says. He's fixing to change his argument.
He's changed it.
You know, that's the whole thing.
If he's
I mean,
leaving,
I know I did.
that's a good question.
I called him. That's what happened.
No, it's not. It's just
You get to amend your position as I catch you. Now I'll catch you on that too.
I get you. Or you catch me whatever you want to catch.
See, that's
So like I
exactly
said,
what's
you
going to
know,
happen.
it's
Wait a minute, what did you catch?
what did it
Okay, he started out with the simple argument, it makes me happy. Okay, I started working on that. I started working on that, and that argument doesn't fit anymore because we all know what makes him happy isn't what's going to make the next deviant happy. They're going to deviate. Now, he can take
You're calling him a deviant?
I'm saying he's deviated from what we have actually been
Pull up
doing.
the tapes. I've said it before, the whole thing. What makes me happy as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. I've always said that. It's just I didn't.
Okay,
I worked hard today. I don't know what you've done.
Okay, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody now. So we've amended the argument. It was just a minute ago, doesn't make anybody, it makes me happy. Now, he knows that the argument against the pedophilia community is that it's hurting the children. Well, I can tell you what, Alfred Kinsey says children love sex. He had 318 little infant and adolescent children that they had sex on, and they documented the whole thing. It's in the book. 318 infant, pre-adolescent, adolescent children that they brought to stimulation on several different levels for hours at a time. And Alfred Kinsey and Pomeroy said that children love to have sex. So you've got the Dr. Kinsey. He's Jesus when it comes to psychiatric community, when it comes to making up the rules for sexuality. He wrote the book. It's called The Male Human Sexuality. Now, he says children love sex. Now, wait a minute. We're basically arguing as long as it doesn't hurt anybody. Well, these Catholic priests, they groom these kids. They basically get them ready. They groom them to think, and listen, y'all, our public school system is introducing sexuality to kids at like second grade. They begin to talk about all kinds of different sex. They begin to talk about safety tips and things of that nature. You're basically breaking down the barrier that the parents have determined whether to answer these questions or not. You know, is my child at 2 years old really able to incorporate all of this information? And the educational system basically saying, well, this is a dangerous thing, so we better give you some safety tips and tell you what's going on. I've read some materials that says this is kind of like telling a terrorist how not to blow himself up. You know, these guys are actually involved in terroristic behavior. And we got a lot of them here in the United States. And, you know, they could blow a lot of people up on accident. So let's put it out on the internet, how not to blow your bomb up before you get ready to explode it. Well, I'm not saying they really do that, but that would be stupid, isn't it? Well, how about the same thing? How about flooding these second graders through the sixth grade with all kinds of information about sex so you don't blow up when you have sex? Really? That's the way to fix this problem? All you're doing is introducing them. And the people at school, how do we know the people at school are not enjoying this? I mean, the Catholic priests are enjoying it. I mean, they're grooming the kids and they're talking to the kids about things that mom and daddy's never talked to them about. They're getting them ready not to just be flipping out when they start touching on them. Now, how's this going to go? Hey, Richard Dawkins is the leading atheist. He was Larry Serber's guru. He said, I idolize and worship Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins was fondled by a priest. He said it didn't bother him, didn't change him, didn't mess him up. Really? I mean, he just passed over that and, you know, just a little crotch grabbing, that didn't bother anybody. That's not going to hurt anybody. You know, he ended up saying also that his dangerous idea, he wrote, you know, I've got a dangerous idea. And his idea was that we're just machines. And you would not punish a machine. And you remember, y'all, I played that famous clip of a guy beating his car to death because it wouldn't crank. You don't beat your car because it doesn't crank. And he said you don't penalize, put in prison people who are child rapists. That's what he said. Larry Serber went berserk. I mean, he paid $70 for like a $14 book to get it here the next day so he could read his idol saying his dangerous idea. And then he tried to play it down. But he admitted that Kinsey was a pedophile sex fiend. Now, how does that go? But I'll tell you one thing, Kinsey was happy. This dude was happy in the movie. He's a happy guy. He's involved in all kinds of misbehavior. And I'm simply saying, we're going to let this rest. This guy is happy, but he's not happy on the buzz because we're giving him his arguments back. This will replay tonight. We haven't really had time today to get it properly. There's a whole hour of this. And I mean, you're going to see some comedy. You'll see his argument messing up. I mean, it's pretty clear that he's messing up on his argument. It'll play in its entirety tonight on YouTube. So I want to shift gears here, and I want to talk about something that all of this is extremely important. But some things are just more difficult than others. And this that I'm talking about, I believe, is the remedy for our problem. But we can't get the medicine. We can't get the medicine fixed. You see, here we are in the Church of Christ. We just looked at Romans chapter 3, verse 1. The Jewish community had the oracles of God. You know what that means? They had the instructions straight from God. And they so messed it up, so corrupted it because of their greed, their love of power, and their love of glory from men, that they just took over and they began to sit in Moses' seat, is what Jesus said about them in Matthew chapter 23. And in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, they actually made themselves God, is what Paul said. And so here we have today the church that Jesus established on the day of Pentecost. Everybody knows this. I mean, the Pentecostal church runs around calling themselves the church that you read about in the New Testament because they get on television and do the baby talk, oogla blue gla 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 ba ba la, oh glory Sunday. That's Jackie Poe's version of speaking in tongues. These people in the first century were speaking in known languages, not known to them, but the 15 different nations that were listening, they knew their language, and they were like, what in the world? These guys are speaking our language, and they've never learned it. But we all know that the church was started on the day of Pentecost, but it's not the Baptist church. There was no Baptist church even recorded anywhere until the 1600s. It wasn't the Pentecostal church. I mean, these guys in the Pentecostal church over on the 700 Club, they admit that the Pentecostal church didn't start till 1902. So what we're saying is there was a church and there was information. The church simply means the called out people. It's the Greek word ecclesia, called out. They were called out by the gospel of Jesus Christ to behave themselves in the fashion that Jesus behaved himself and according to the teachings that Jesus left behind to the apostles through the Holy Ghost, through the Holy Spirit. And it's recorded in this book. And the problem is the Church of Christ is not acting like the Church of Christ. And in 300 years, well, really in a generation, according to the New Testament, the gospel went out through all the known world. These folks were so zealous of this New Testament, New Will and Testament from God's own Son, that they would not, there was nothing that would stand in their way, not death. I mean, these guys wrote, there's martyrs, guys who gave up their life. They wrote letters to the Roman emperors, and they're called martyrs. And they said things like Tertullian said, we're mown down and our blood is seed. The more you mow us down, the more we multiply. Can you imagine somebody caring about their truth to that degree that they're willing to just be mown down, fed to the lions, burned in the streets, and yet they wouldn't change. They wouldn't go against Jesus. They wouldn't deny. Well, we've all seen the movie Braveheart. I don't even know how true it is, and it's well into time, but it depicts a guy who for no reason would he recant. No way would he give in that what he was doing was not right. These people in the New Testament, this is a real account, and it's not corrupted. It's been here for 2,000 years. And the Church of Christ is in your area, but the problem is the Church of Christ is not acting like the Church of Christ. They're acting in a fashion that resembles denominationalism more. They're changing the rules. Elders don't stand up against marriage, divorce, and remarriage. If the magistrate's not going to stand up for it, there is a stopgap measure. It's called elderships. It's called the shepherds that are in the flock. They're supposed to convict the gainsayer. Titus chapter 1, verse 9 and 10 says. They're supposed to hold up the sound doctrine. And evangelists are supposed to back them up. These guys are to set in order things that are lacking. They're supposed to stand in the gap. That's not happening. We have guys that are more concerned about their glory, their power, their paycheck. And we just have all kinds of unbelievable political power, envy, greed that is going on. And it's going on at all levels. And tonight, we're basically saying, when is enough going to be enough? When are we going to get to the point where we say, you know, what in the world? You know, every now and then, you have an opportunity. And I'm being very careful here because I'm going to expose and then I'm going to promote. I'm going to promote one guy who won't promote himself, and I'm going to expose another guy who wants to promote himself. And I want to say, you know, before we even get started, folks, this could be monumental. One way or the other, I don't know which way this is going to go because I'm about to call out a name of an extremely prominent individual in the churches of Christ. And I'm going to expose him. And then I'm going to promote a gentleman who is not promoting himself really at all. And I hold in my book, in my hand, his second book. And this is really the reason why I'm willing to go out on a limb and promote this particular individual. And the reason why is because he's written a no holds barred book about his own inability to be your example of anything. He actually wrote a book called Muscle and Shovel, and it just simply means that you have to dig deep and you have to use the muscle that's in your head in order to find the truth. That's just all there is to it. And it's the truth in any field. If you're going to be a doctor, you have to use your brain and you have to dig deep in your pocket and you have to dig deep as far as perspiration is concerned to get your degree. If you're going to be a psychiatrist, same thing. If you're going to be a teacher, same thing. Any field that is worth anything, you have to dig deep and you have to use your muscle. And saving your soul through the grace of God, through his son, Jesus Christ, is no different. It's one of the most wonderful things in the world. And you have to dig deep to find the truth because there's a bunch of garbage out here that's covering it up. You have to use your brain and you have to think. You have to think like Troy had to think on the bus. That's why Troy is all stressed out tonight. I guarantee he's stressed out. I've already been with Troy 2 years ago. He was so stressed out that he's getting a lawyer. If I ever text him again, well, he's feeling better now. He's got a crowd around him that's okay in his marriage and all that. But he's stressed out tonight. Why? Because his arguments don't work. You have to dig past all this garbage to get to the truth. So Michael Shank wrote the book about himself working as he was a Baptist. He was working for a company and he was actually selling things to churches. Or he was going around and he was monitoring their equipment. And so he had a pool of many pastors that he could talk to. And he ran into a member of the Church of Christ that worked with him. And this guy began to show him that Baptist is not in the Bible. There's no Baptist church in the Bible. And he began to talk to him about his choice as far as saving his soul. And the more he talked to Michael, the more Michael realized, you know what, this guy's making sense. I believe I can see something here. My arguments aren't working. This guy named Randall, his arguments are working. So Michael starts a notebook, and then he starts going out to all these pastors that he's monitoring their equipment, and he takes Randall's arguments out to these pastors, and they can't answer it. Or if they do make an answer, he brings it back to Randall, and Randall squashes it with the Bible. And after about a year of this, Michael basically says, you know, these pastors, they don't know anything about the Bible. They just make up stuff as they go. They're all divided up, arguing with each other, and none of them follow the New Testament. He said, I think I'm going to become a New Testament Christian. He eventually published the book. But you know something that we didn't know? We didn't know that Michael, in between the time he published the book and the time that some of us started knowing him as a gospel preacher, he actually fell away. He saw inside the Church of Christ. He saw that the Church of Christ was the truth in the Bible, and he wanted to tell everybody. But as he began to involve himself with the community of the Church of Christ, he began to realize, you know what? These folks, they're not on fire. They don't even act like they believe that they have the saving message of the New Testament for the world. They're just acting like everybody else. And he eventually fell away. Well, in between the time that he wrote the book and he became a gospel preacher, he decided that he would write a book. No, maybe I got that wrong. After he became a gospel preacher and he began to see what was going on in the churches, he decided to write a book and to tell you about his experience as a fallen away person in the Church of Christ and dealing with the elders and the evangelists that are in the churches of Christ and how it was just a hopeless situation. Nobody cared about him. And it's a tell-all. And let me tell you something, my friends. If you've read Muscle and Shovel, it's great. But if you've not read When the Shovel Breaks, I don't think you've seen yourself. When I read this book, it killed me to my soul. And this book is what's making me tonight be willing to promote Michael Shank as a regular person with feet of clay who has told you all of his problems in this book. And guess what? People still love him. But here's the deal. Only 14,000 people have read this book. Now, 400,000 of the other book, the first book about the account of him finding answers for his denominational issue and finding the true church, 400,000 of those have gone out. But when he wrote the other church, it's a tell-all about his own life and the problems inside the Church of Christ. I think that he told me there's only 14,000 issues of this one sold. Let me tell you something. The Church of Christ needs this information. I hope that you'll share this broadcast, if for nothing else, for this information. Now, at the same time, and the reason I'm willing to promote him is there's not any surprise for me about Michael Shank. Someone might say, Johnny, aren't you afraid to hitch yourself to Michael Shank? I'm not hitching myself to anybody. You know, it could be that Michael needs to be afraid to hitch himself to me, because next week I could fall down in the dirt and be as low as Jonah was when he was in the bottom of that whale's belly. You could just find out that, you know what, Johnny Robertson is a worthless wretch. You know what? Sometimes I am. I'm not always behaving myself. I don't mind hitching myself to this guy because you know what? He's already exposed that he is a human, that he's got all kinds of problems that all of us deal with, and he put it in this book. And he didn't do it to make himself look good. There is no way you write a book like this to make yourself look good. There's stuff in here that he tells about himself that you would just say, dude, I can't believe that you said that about yourself. And anytime this situation happens again that you just described, and we're there, we're going to be eyeballing you. Well, you know, when a person actually tells you something about himself, he can always get better. You know, I'm worried right now that individuals are going to attack me as I bring this information out. But you know what? What can they attack me with? Because the Collinsville Church of Christ told everything there is to know about my past when I withstood them and basically set up another congregation across town and took their goods away from them that they had clinched, that they had gotten in the wrong way. That's all I'm going to say about it. When we took that from them and moved over across town and then began to evangelize the whole area with a gusto that we didn't even begin to have when I was there, they dug up my criminal record from 30-something years ago. So, you know, what are you going to bring up? Well, I'm sure there's something. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about a gentleman named Milton Sewell. Now, I had an inkling that Milton Sewell was actually saying derogatory things about Michael Shank's book. You know, there are other people in our brotherhood that says Michael Shank's first book is not true. It's all made up. I've read some of the emails. They demanded to know who Randall was. You know, if you don't tell us who Randall is, the guy who taught you, the other person in the book, if you don't tell us who he is so we can go and investigate him, we're going to expose you for the liar that you are. Oh, really? Is that how that works? Other authors in the Church of Christ who can't sell anything because basically they're acting like the Pharisees, the Jews, and the Sadducees, the ruling class that was in control of Judaism when Jesus came on the scene. These folk want to be looked up to. They want to be idolized. They're the ones that I actually exposed on Wednesday and Sunday of last week, running around at Bear Valley, Faulkner University, Harding University, Lipscomb University, Pepperdine University, Oklahoma Christian University. Are they all in bed together? You better believe it. I played clips of the guy that's putting the lectureship together in OCU over there, Stafford North, saying, man, Pepperdine Remember, it's not a peppermint stick on your tree. It's Pepperdine. It's a college. And the guy who is running the lectureship is named Jerry Rushford. He's been inviting denominational people over there to that college, so-called Church of Christ, Brotherhood College. And Stafford North says, man, his lessons are really, they're always sound when he's over here. Seriously? That's all out on YouTube, Wednesday night and Sunday night's broadcast. And so I'm basically saying these guys that have been envious of Michael, they'll just do anything. And so when I heard that Milton Sewell said that, I asked for an interview. I called him up, left a message on his machine. He heard the message and he called me back. And we had an interview on the record for Religious Review. And this is what he said about Michael Shank's book. Take a listen.
I don't have a lot of confidence in it right now. I thought the book was good, and I read the second book too, and I thought it was good too. But I don't. Well, I've somebody that, well, my wife read through it. She said, I don't believe that all these things happen in the way that they went about it. She said, there's something about it. She's a writer. She said, there's something about it that just doesn't. She said, I think that idea is good. I think it's a great story. Let's say it right now. I thought the book was good, and I read the second book too, and I thought it was good too. But I don't. Well, I've somebody that, well, my wife read through it. She said, I don't believe that all these things happen in the way that they went about it. She said, there's something about it. She's a writer.
Oh, she's a writer too. The other guy that's writing these emails that says that Randall is a made-up, fictitious person, that there's no such person as Randall. We all know Randall's not his name. Michael didn't name the guy because the guy didn't want the notoriety, but he's a real person. The other guy said, he's fictitious. I don't believe it. He's a writer too. Guess you probably, most people in the Church of Christ never heard of him. And his books are not selling very well. Guess what? When you go to some of the seminars that this other envious person conducts, when you get to your chair, there'll be a free copy of Michael Shank's book waiting on you. Well, wait a minute. I'm running this little seminar. Why aren't my books in the chair? Because your books are no good. Everybody everybody doesn't. Unfortunately, people don't realize that there's a lot of fakes and phonies out there in the Church of Christ who are very famous. I don't know Milton Sewell's wife either. You know why? Never heard of her book. But she's a writer. And since she read the book, and she's a writer, and she says, this book's not true. So is that really how books sell? One writer looks at another writer's material, and the writer says, this is not true. Wait a minute. Could it be that writer A that's looking at writer B's material, that they've got some other issue going on? I mean, there's other people like myself. I think the book is true. I actually know Michael Shank. I visited in his home, broken bread with the man. He and his wife spent time with him, hours and hours and hours on the phone, 2, 3 in the morning, discussing with him. I think the book is true. I'm not a writer. I'm not an author. And you know what? I don't really have anything to lose by promoting a gentleman who basically is a self-defaming, humble individual who's just trying to help people find the truth. Muscle and a shovel, and when the shovel breaks. You want to see yourself? When the shovel breaks. It is a fantastic picture of how individuals become when they fall away from the Lord. The beautiful part of the story is it's also filled with hope because Michael, with the grace of God and our Lord Jesus Christ's help, he gets back on his feet. And he's now trying to help individuals to see the truth and to help individuals see the church, in the church, see the church, how it really is. He talks about elders and preachers. I mean, he knows them, let me tell you. Misbehavior. I'm going to assist him by telling you how the schools are. I don't have any confidence in any of these schools. None of them. Faulkner, Lipscomb, OCU, Barron Valley, Freed Hardeman, Pepperdine, none of them, from the head to the foot, corrupt. And I can prove it. If I have to prove it without anybody's accreditation or anybody saying, Johnny, do this or not, I can do that. I basically have made up my mind that I'm going to keep this broadcast on the air for a year if everybody that knows me drops my support. I'm going to keep the broadcast for a year. I'll tell you what, in a year, I can just about prove anything that's true. And it is true. I've already demonstrated that Freed Hardeman is right in the middle of this bed of unbelievable ungodliness. Milton Sewell is on the board of directors of the Christian Chronicle. If you're a member of the Church of Christ and you're listening to me, you know the Christian Chronicle has been corrupt for years. Lynn McMillan on the board, he's the editor. Lynn McMillan is still publishing Lynn Anderson. Who's Lynn Anderson? In 1983, called the Church of Christ one big sick denomination. Jay Lockhart was still using him on television in 1993. I can prove that. It's on my YouTube site. Jay Lockhart is on the board of directors at Freed Hardeman, and Jay Lockhart is a continual participant in OCU with people from Pepperdine, people from Abilene. I talked to him on tape also and asked him, would he oppose them? No, he's not going to oppose them. But Freed Hardeman is the last bastion of sound doctrine. Really? How can they be sound if Milton Sewell's on the board of the directors of the Christian Chronicle? And here's a guy who is willing to defame Michael Shank for what? He cannot prove from his wife being an author that Michael Shank made up this account. That's just not possible. That's not verifiable information. That's not empirical evidence. That's just somebody saying, my wife's an author. Well, she can look into her crystal ball and see that these people didn't exist and that his memoirs are really not true. It's all made up. It's just too fabulous. It just can't be. His books are selling 400,000. They can't get enough of them over at Freed Hardeman. Listen, folks, that's where we are tonight. And that's my broadcast. I'm Johnny Robertson. This is What Does the Bible Say? And it's no holds barred. Whether you like it, whether you don't, just dissect it and ask the question, is it the truth? God bless you. Good night. Oh, let me say this. Don't cut me off, y'all. Caleb is right behind me. He has an expose on the First Baptist Church. Listen, folks, we're not picking on people that are out of here. We're in our own backyard, and Caleb is coming up right behind me. So stay with us. We have more very exciting information that's coming with you. Now, I'll say good night, and God bless you.
Wild things about the Church of Christ. But now's your chance to find out for yourself. Starting September the 12th through the 23rd at 7 p.m. each night at the Eden Fairgrounds, you can find out the truth about the Church of Christ. No collections or offerings will ever be taken, and your questions are always welcome. Don't believe the gossip. Only believe the gospel. We hope to see you there.
Know what the Bible says, but I can tell you one thing right now.
A little bit together tonight. What we're going to do is come in after Dad's hour about the homosexual community and pushing their agenda, and Mr. Troy. Now, he's ex-Marine, homosexual, and I kind of like what Troy does. He was on Headliners some year or two ago, and somebody was trying to get him on the, Black Power agenda. He said, look, man, I got my own stuff to deal with. And he's just trying to push for the homosexual agenda. And one of the things that he just comes back and says is, how do you get to trust the Bible? Well, tonight, we're going to show you that people like First Baptist Church in Martinsville, Virginia, right on Starling Avenue with John Fulcher, Matt, the assistant pastor. I don't really know what Matt's last name is. But even, Micah, how many years ago was this discussion that you had? Just tell me. A year.
It was a year ago.
January of last year.
January of last year, Micah talked to the former associate pastor over at First Baptist, and they were having this new idea, new type of Bible study. Can we go ahead and see what that would look like?
what do you think about when people start trying to innovate Bible study? You know, seriously, to what degree are we going to come up with some new sleek thing? You know, it's like, oh, make your PowerPoint look super sharp, man. No, this is what it is. Let me scoot over just a little bit. New program isn't your typical Bible study. Now, what were they actually doing? Here's the guy. Now, I'm just going to comment. You know, technically, I'm a millennial. I don't really buy all that garbage, but if, you know, that's what my generation's called, then so be it. Here he is. You know, I got my beard. I got my plaid shirt. It's not tucked in, bro. Not tucked in. And so what are we doing? We're going to re-examine the Bible stories and learn things about them that they might have been taught as children in Sunday school. Wilson said the group is named after a quote popularized by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And what are they going to be doing there? He actually says towards the end of the study, Wilson said, craft beer is available at the Ark for those who want to partake. Now that's very hip to the millennials. Hey man, let's come down and study John chapter 2 where Jesus turned water into wine, then we'll drink some wine. No, that should not be what Bible study is about. And really, they know that that's not what Bible study is about. Very well, they know that this is just some tool to get people in. Mr. John Fulcher did not like that I talked about their organ, their pipe organ, because he said that I made it sound like they spent $1 million on the pipe organ when really they only have it insured for $1 million. Come on. And I said, well, even you know that a used pipe organ isn't cheap. And he said, we wouldn't even buy a used pipe organ. That wouldn't fit the build of our room. It wouldn't sound good. Well, sorry, I'm not a connoisseur of pipe organs. I don't know what all goes into them. You know, I'm basically praising God the way that the Bible says to, a cappella. We don't bring a guitar and a pipe organ and things like that. But you get the new sleeked out version of worship. And, you know, that's what it was back in the 1800s. Bring the melodeon in, bring the organ in, sleek, new. Hey, it's hip. We're not drinking yet, but we're bringing in all this other stuff. So really, why? I mean, why do we need that? And right now we're working on getting Micah mic'd up with us. But remember, this is the First Baptist Church of Starling Avenue, Martinsville, Virginia. Mr. John Fulcher, and this man's name was Daniel Wilson. Did he only last a year? He only lasted a year. And I kind of wonder, is he the scapegoat? We'll get the millennial preacher to come in. We'll offer up craft beer on our Bible study. You know, I do if that wasn't a success. And really, if you're drinking with folk, who wants to drink? You know, where a place it's like, how rowdy can you get? You know, Hank Williams Jr., all my rowdy friends are coming over tonight. We're going to drink craft beer after Bible study, y'all, and then what? Well, I don't know. You ain't going to have no fun over at the First Baptist Church when we're drunk, drinking craft beer. And then think about this, too. Who's driving you home? Now, friends, come on. I segued into all this by saying a homosexual said, how can we trust the Bible? Now, doesn't First Baptist look ridiculous? John Fulcher, I've said he's a nice guy. You know, he's not, I'm going to say he's not some redneck Baptist like a lot of Baptists are around here. He's just a nice, elderly man, elderly to me. I don't know how old he is exactly, but I appreciate him letting us come in. But he, you know, says to me, I don't like what you said about the organ because you tried to make us look bad. I didn't just try to make them look bad. This newspaper article makes them look bad. What is he? He goes on to say that we feel alienated from church due to various trivial taboos. Really? Because you can't drink. Do you know that as far as home abuse is 30% caused by alcoholic consumption. So 30% of the instances of it. Now you might be saying 30% is not very high. Do you hear yourself? 30% of child abuse and spousal abuse isn't very high. It should be 0%. And 30% of it is caused by alcohol consumption. And who is extending that to them? First Baptist on Starling Avenue, John Fulcher and Daniel Wilson, who's no longer there anymore. But Matt's there. And can we get the picture of Daniel again?
Oh, you want Daniel?
Yeah, well, let's leave it on Matt. See, Matt?
You know,
excuse me. Matt, a little blurry picture, but he's got the beard. You know, a lot of times he doesn't have his shirt tucked in. He might come in cargo shorts. And you're talking about, well, Caleb, why are you getting down on you know, all their wardrobe, stuff like that? Because I'm not buying into the stuff that you're presenting to my agenda. I don't buy Casual Friday. Most workplaces don't either. When you bring in Casual Friday, the productivity goes down. And I can tell you there's not much productivity with Matt and his Bible study. He cannot handle what we're putting out, and that's why they're asking us not to come back to the Bible study. They cannot handle just simple things about biblical inspiration. Now, I've got to take a minute. Have you got a mic yet?
I don't know. No, not yet.
Okay. I have to take a minute and get a video pulled up. The Bible and inspiration and the Baptist church. You know, people talk about the Baptist church as American as apple pie. And they act like the Baptist church is the closest thing to the Bible, and it's not. They have so much stuff involved in their type of worship, and it's just not biblical at all. I mean, just from the pipe organ to the drinking beer.
I can play mine.
Okay, you
while
do
you're
that.
looking for yours.
Do it.
So you can tell them this is from a year ago.
Okay,
talking about Bible
now
inspiration.
this is a year ago with Daniel Wilson on Bible inspiration. We're going to lead up to what happened last week, discussion about Bible inspiration.
What is your view of the Bible? Do you view it as, it is the all-inspired, inerrant, God-breathed word? Or I know that there are some that have, moved to the point where, it's not as far as like the Mormons or anything like that, but to say that, it does have moral guidelines, it can be used as a moral compass, but, we're still getting new revelation today and everything like that.
That's such a difficult question. That's such a difficult question because my own journey with regard to that question, and that's been a controlling question. I grew up.
I'm curious as to what's so difficult about it. Asking about inspiration.
Yeah.
What makes discussing Bible inspiration so difficult, and why do we care about his journey into the search of biblical inspiration?
Yeah. And like the rest of the world is waiting on, First Baptist Associate Pastor's journey. You got people that are dying and going to hell, and it's like, well, this guy saying, well, and I get, you got to study, you got to learn, but man, Hebrews 6 says there are things called the first principles of Christ. And he's talking about, on my journey, I just don't know that I can even trust the Bible yet.
And he's already got a degree from Duke University.
And John does too. John Fulcher and Matt, this is what we're saying too. Can we get our phone lines up, please, just for anybody who would like to call in? I noticed that Dad, I don't think, had his up. But really, y'all, at what point do the degrees, just go out the window? Because we haven't been to official colleges, stuff like that. We went to schools of preaching where we got a piece of paper from it. We don't flaunt it. By no means, really, in my mind, does it mean anything. I just had intensified Bible study. So why doesn't John Fulcher feel the need to defend himself, or Matt defend himself, when it comes to their positions? At First Baptist, they are a Baptist church now. And they are for women preachers over there. And the First Baptist Church in Starling Avenue, Martinsville, Virginia.
Do we want an actual statement of that?
Yeah, go ahead. And it's like, for years, Baptists wouldn't have done that. And we're coming to the point now where when I talked to John, now, I told John Fulcher I did not record him until the meeting they had where they asked us not to come back. And I had a discussion with him one day in their church library, and he told me that they were okay with women preachers. And I said, so what do you do, John, with 1 Timothy 2, where he said, I suffer not a woman to teach, neither to usurp authority over the man? And John said, well, there's some apocryphal writing where about Paul, where he traveled around doing missionary work with a woman, and she preached also. And he said, but really, I don't think Paul even intended that we were going to be reading his literature. What? You've got Acts 9, where Jesus says you're going to be a vessel to go out to the Jews, the kings, and the Gentiles to tell them the gospel. And then he says, well, I don't really think Paul thought we were going to be reading the mail. That's just a sorry excuse. That's I don't have an argument right now, so I'm just going to throw out some I don't really believe in the Bible. Isn't that what that is? Modernistic views to where we're saying we really can't trust the Bible. Why do that? That's why Troy, and what's Troy's last name? Well, that's a strange name.
Yeah,
so Troy says, I don't trust the Bible. It's written by men. Why would I listen to that? Why would you listen to it when the pastors at First Baptist over on Starling Avenue in Martinsville, Virginia, when they're saying, I don't know if I trust the Bible? Okay, Micah, let's hear a little bit about women preachers.
So do y'all have any affiliation with the First Baptist in Collinsville?
Hello, is this Caleb?
Yes, it is.
Caleb, I'm calling because you all's picture has gone off the TV screen. It's scrambled, and the audio was not good. And now all I've got on my screen is just light blue and can't see anything.
All right, we'll check into it. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, well, we'll look into it, but we're on TV. Yep. You know, we'll see what's going on in the tech room. Okay, so we're going to hear a little bit about their position on women preachers.
And this is from a year ago.
Okay.
So do y'all have any affiliation with the First Baptist in Collinsville?
We are part of the same local Baptist association.
Southern Baptist?
Yeah. That tends to spark some debate. The Henry County Baptists have historically been Southern Baptists.
Right.
You drive by their building, just about across from the county building.
Right. Yeah, I've seen that.
Out there, the sign still says that we're Southern Baptist Association. However, a number of the churches, that would include us, Starling Avenue, Villa Heights, and Chatham, and I might be missing a few there, but we're primarily, we identify ourselves as CBF churches, Cooperative Baptist Fellowship churches, which is a little bit more on the moderate side of things. We identify ourselves as CBF churches, Cooperative Baptist Fellowship churches, which is a little bit more on the moderate side of things. We identify ourselves as CBF churches, Cooperative Baptist Fellowship churches, which is a little bit more on the moderate side of things.
Now, I think that's interesting because that's kind of basically what you have a bunch of the Muslims saying. Well, you know, we are Muslim, but we're more moderate, less extreme Muslim. So basically what he's saying is we're holding on to the name Baptist, but we really are not anything Baptist.
And everybody's got that. I mean, I talked to a Jew the other day in Eden, and he says, well, I'm a Jew. And I said, okay, so what does that mean for you? And he said, well, and I said, what are you? Orthodox? Are you practicing at all? He said, well, I'm a Reformed Jew, which basically means I'm a liberal Jew. You know, everybody's got one. So why not just come up with your own thing? Just why hold on to the baggage of being Baptist? Why? I mean, and I think it's like the older crowd who said, I'm a die Baptist. We don't want to lose them yet. But then when you get the millennials coming in and it's like we're offering them a cold one and they're like, I don't care about being a Baptist. Well, hey, we're Cooperative Fellowship and we really don't buy into the whole Southern Baptist You know, we're cool, we're hip, we're liberal. You know, we're for pro-choice, stuff like that. I mean, what is their position? Where do we start drawing lines in the sand? And then when we draw a line, where do we actually stand with it? That we're not going to just, you know, waver with whoever comes in the door. How about that? Because it's like, you know, how much Micah where they were talking to us, you know, Matt really wouldn't answer our questions, but it's like stuff that they would say with us, is that going to be their answer for everybody else? Because like, as I kept saying, our reputation precedes us. Well, if they know where we're coming from and we're not going to be liberal, I mean, we're going to be biblical, we're going to stand where God stands on it. Do you think that's actually going to make them address or start hemming up some of their things?
I mean, you would think so if it was, you know, if the threat was, okay, this is going to be put out there, we need to start doing some damage control. But I mean, I think that a majority of the churches are actually going in the direction that these other places are going, but they're just sticking with those titles. And so really, when you get down to it, the Church of Christ in Martinsville is really the last church that is, actually it is the last church there in town, but we are the last true church that is actually standing on biblical principles and going to stand with the doctrine. And on to just more and more, they can continue to go by the wayside. I mean, actually in this discussion that I had with Daniel, and if I had thought about it, I mean, I knew Dad was coming on the show, but if I had thought about it, I came across a discussion where we got into it about homosexuals. And he started addressing, Daniel did, in January of last year, that Christians actually emphasize more the homosexual problem than the Bible does. That in the situation with Sodom and Gomorrah, it's very similar. Do you remember the young man that our friend Omar showed us on YouTube? That's a homosexual, and he's going around doing all these lectures.
Yeah.
He's actually going around saying that, you know what, the problem that Sodom and Gomorrah had wasn't really with homosexuality. It was being lustful and not being hospitable, because they're trying to come in to this man's house and take these people out. Forget about the rape part. They are just being unhospitable. Daniel Wilson ends up saying the same thing that this young guy was saying. That's a homosexual. So here you have, and you know, Caleb, I wondered if the reason why he only lasted a year is because he actually sat down and talked with me so long.
Yeah.
An hour and a half. He and I talked.
Well, you know, you do that. You talk with Daniel, is that his name?
Yeah.
And he's gone. I talked to Mark White, put it on TV, he's gone. So, I mean, at what point, this is the thing that they say about us. Well, just don't mess with them and they'll go away. No. Once we come to mess with y'all, your preacher goes away. And if they don't go away, they go into hiding. We can't talk with Larry Luffman. Catholics trying to get a restraining order on me, they can't get that right any more than their doctrine. Jackie Post Church did the same thing with Johnny, restraining order. And it's like, honestly, you've got Paul in the New Testament going from town to town saying, let's talk Bible. Let's have a Bible discussion. And Jackie Poe would say, no, I'm getting a restraining order on you, fella. Why? What are we hiding? Well, at First Baptist, can we get that video going? I'm saying the one I gave you.
All right.
And
well, we never did actually hear him say about the women
okay,
preachers.
Let's get that.
And so I know for us, we have a historical connection to the Southern Baptist Church, but we have since distanced ourselves, and the convention has distanced themselves from us, particularly on the matter of women being ordained.
Okay.
We do ordain women, and it was at that point that, and we have had women pastors here, but it was at that point that he sent the money, and they politely sent it back and said, don't bother. And he said, well, that's fine.
Baptist turning down money. Who would have thought it?
And it's just for the whole matter of we want to be unbiblical. We want to have a woman preacher when the Bible specifically says not to. And think about this too, y'all. First Baptist on Starling in Martinsville, they'll bring in women preachers, which is not biblical, but they won't debate us, and they say that our practice of recording people is satanic, and they say that we don't show Christian love because we're willing to debate. How do you get that? I mean, they debated in the Bible. We're going to debate like they did in the Bible, but you all get to have a woman preacher when 1 Timothy 2 says don't do that. So, Micah, the first one I'd like to start with is First Baptist and inspiration.
All right.
All right. So what you guys have done is have a brief conversation about your presence in our Sunday school. We just want to know what's your end goal. What's the long game for you in terms of coming to our Bible study? What's the reason?
All right, now pause that.
Brought you in.
Do you think that every visitor gets grilled like that? If Troy, who's a homosexual, went into their church, does Troy get taken into a side office and they say, okay, Troy, what's your end goal? Why are you coming here? Keep in mind, I've been going there for like 6 months every Thursday. I sit in the class. There would be some days I didn't even make a comment. Usually, and I can tell you where I did make comments. Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Daniel 9, Amos 5, and Amos 9. I missed Hosea, and when I came back, I don't even remember where they were, what book they were in. So it's like, if I can tell you now what comments I were making, and I'm not being disruptive, why do we have to be grilled that way? We've had a Jehovah's Witness man who was going, he really isn't a technical Jehovah's Witness, but he likes their doctrine. He came to our Revelation class. Hey, man, glad to have you. We're glad you're here. Hope you come back. We had
him free material.
Yeah, we gave him a bunch of material. Guy comes over from the Christian church. Hey, man, glad you're here for the Revelation class. Glad you're here. come back. He stayed with us the entire class.
Ask questions.
But we don't take him in a downstairs office and say, look, buddy, why are you here? Now, keep listening to what he goes on to say.
Reason brought you into a room. We've shut the door so other people can't hear it. Okay, so that we can have a moment of trust among the four of us, so we can have a conversation.
And I've already. We brought you into a room. We shut the door so other people can't hear it, so that we can have a moment of trust amongst the four of us. Is it really a moment of trust amongst the four of us, or is it so that his members don't hear us answering them?
I say it's kind of like the closed door meeting that the Sanhedrin had with the men that they sent out to bring Jesus, and they didn't bring Jesus back, and they're trying to figure out, okay, why didn't you bring him back like we told you to?
And keep going if you got more.
And it's just on the response that they end up giving is, and I just realized I don't have my Bible program open. We're flying in here trying to get everything going. The response they end up giving is, how could we bring him in? Nobody is speaking. Nobody's answering like this person, like this man is answering.
Well, that made me think of also Acts chapter 4 and 5. They take them in, and they're in there privately, and they're also just saying to ourselves, what are we going to do about these people? I mean, what's the point of having a private meeting with somebody? When we come, we're very open. We're ready to discuss. We've got our Bibles out. I don't have my phone, but that's our recording equipment. We come in with our big recording equipment. So why have the closed door, the moment of trust? It's like, how more, they say we're not honest and above board. How more above board can we be by saying we would like for you to come on our show to have a debate where we have equal speaking time? We don't cut you off. You get to say your piece. You can respond to us. We respond to you. But somehow we're dishonest and satanic. But we're not saying we're having a moment of trust where we shut the door so that nobody can hear us. Honestly, how does that look? You got the Catholics over on Spruce Street again that are saying, we don't want you here and you can't talk to our priest. Leave. We're going to get a restraining order on you. And then you got First Baptist where they say, well, we're taking you into an office to have a moment of trust where nobody can hear us. Why all the secrets? Honestly, when you're looking at the Bible, they're out in the open of the temple. They're teaching people. And it's just because they know their church isn't in the Bible. And as we continue to listen, they don't know how to defend their positions.
In the whole classes that I've come here, I have not recorded y'all to put y'all on TV. And it's like,
Okay, we're talking about right now.
So I'm saying, why does that other bit count? That really, I didn't come in here with the intention of recording, but I did know today based on.
Well, it just means you can't be trusted.
You guys aren't criminal. I found that out. And so it's just.
We have different opinions about inspiration. I can tell this morning.
Okay, yeah. So why teach Q theory if you don't believe it?
I teach what?
Why teach them about Q theory if you don't believe it?
Just tell them what's out there. What's out there.
Yeah, and then like when we got in here.
All right, now, let's wait a minute. I asked John Fulcher, why teach people about Q theory? And he said, just to let people know what's out there. Well, we'll let you know what Q theory is. Q theory is where modernists who doubt the Bible, this is what they say about the Bible. It's a good book, but it's not inspired. It's a good book that we should live by, but it was just written by men, and that's all. There's no significance or power or deity that was anything in the inspiration. It's just a good book. And so they take the book of Mark, and they say that's the original gospel account that Matthew and Luke drew off of. And this is what they say. Have you noticed that everything that's in Mark is in Matthew and then Luke, and then Matthew adds some stuff and Luke adds some stuff? They're longer books. There's not really a surprise that you're going to find where Matthew has 28 chapters and Luke has 24 chapters and Mark only has 16, that you're going to find all the stuff in the longer books. And they call this Q theory. And Q comes from a German word that we don't need to know tonight. We're not German. So they take that and they say, well, these men copied what another man wrote. And you know what that does? That diminishes biblical reliability. Now, why are we saying this? Think about Troy. Troy is a homosexual who recently, legally, by the government standard, got married to another man. But you've got John Fulcher and Matt over here saying, Q theory, we just want to put it out there, that Mark is the original source and Matthew and Luke simply quoted somebody. They looked at it and they added some stuff to it, but it's really not inspired of God. Well, then Troy hears that and he says, well, if that's the case, then 1 Corinthians 6:9, where it says the effeminate and abusers of themselves with mankind can't go to heaven. Well, maybe that's false. You've got First Baptist saying, come drink with us. And then on top of that, they're saying, let me tell you about Q theory. You know, in Titus, this is the thing that I don't understand also, Micah. Titus chapter 1, you know, John and Matt, they actually on their website call themselves Reverend. When you're in person, they're pastor. And when you're with the pastor over a congregation, their job is to protect people from false doctrine, not to introduce them to it. Look at chapter 1 of Titus, verse 10. For there are many unruly and vain talkers and deceivers, especially they of the circumcision, whose mouths must be stopped, who subvert whole houses, teaching things which they ought not, for filthy lucre's sake. So the pastor should answer those people. But in First Baptist case, you've got the pastor actually introducing the word to subvert whole houses. So why bother?
And you know, I was in listening again to what he said in the meeting. I wish that we had been recording that class.
Yeah.
Because he was not presenting Q theory as, you know, this is an option out here. The scholars are saying, this is what the scholars have to say about Q theory. There was no doubt in his speech about it. He was laying it out there as if this actually happened. That all this is actually factual. Now, and they threw up another author that I think they tried to say in the meeting that actually said that it wasn't the case. But I mean, but either way, you're going to throw it up there about how that this is out there. The scholars are talking about it. This is how it worked out. And then they didn't actually even bring up inspiration.
Yeah. And when we did bring it up, which if you play a little bit more of the clip, then we'll hear some more. So let's go a little bit further with it.
Inspiration, that's just something that I'm wondering. So I'm saying stuff like that.
We're not answering your doctor.
Yeah, I'm saying stuff like that when it's in class. That's the stuff I like to discuss. You know, that's why I want to put my viewpoints in that room. When we got on the discussion.
We got a phone call. Good evening, and what does the Bible say?
Hey, Caleb.
Yes.
This is real important. It came to me. Maybe you and Micah would be somewhere together, or at your home, or at your daddy's house, and Micah goes out the door, and you say, Micah, where are you going? He said, I'm going to fight this war with the sword of Jesus.
Well, that's what we're trying to do tonight. You got a question?
No, I'm through.
Okay, thanks. Well, we're trying to fight this now, and it's just a shame that we're having to fight it with people who are saying, hey, you know, we believe in Jesus and we believe da-da-da-da. But if Q theory, that you've got men just writing stories from another man's story, then why do we even think, how do we know Jesus is real, which plays into what Troy says? If I can't believe this, then why do I need to shape my life around it? And they just continuously do it. And the scriptures that we brought up, they weren't ready for it at all. Can we keep going just a little bit more?
When it's in class, that's the stuff I like to discuss. You know, that's why I want to put my viewpoints in that room when we got on the discussion. And I said 2 Timothy 3:16. Now, I'm just honestly what it comes down to is I think we're actually better at having the debate, because I was able to jump to 2 Timothy 3:16 to Galatians 1, where he said, I didn't receive this from man, but from God. And I think y'all don't like that. Honestly, it's not that I'm so closed-minded and open for discussion. It's that because I'm a better
That's what
debater.
you're trying to show.
I don't want to show
maybe
that.
they'll come to your church. I've seen you talking to them in the parking lot.
All right.
I want.
Now, there it is. There's John's problem. You're just trying to show off, and I see you talking to him out in the parking lot, and you're trying to get him to come to your church. Okay, John, you got me. Now, number one, I don't have a church, but like John doesn't want to get people out of the Catholic Church, out of the Mormon Church, out of Jehovah's Witness denomination. We're not playing a game here. They are. We're not. We are trying to save souls, and I do want to get people out of that denomination. They have people in there that realize the Bible says that baptism is for the remission of sins, and Baptists say, no, it's not. But they also realize that the Christian church won't baptize people in the wintertime because it's too cold. Well, if the Christian church really thought it was for salvation, it wouldn't matter how cold it is. They'd break the ice. But guess where John is? John is saying, well, I don't think any of us really know because the words weren't translated right. There he goes again. Can't trust the Bible. So tonight, let's look at some verses to actually see how we got the Bible. You know, this is the thing too, Micah, that I don't get. Dad had a caller the other night, and he asked him, you know, Johnny, what do you think the oldest Bible is? And, you know, can we get it? Friends, if you got the oldest Bible that there was, you wouldn't be able to read it. So what do you think you're going to do with it? Honestly, you've got what's called the Syriac Peshitta. And that's the oldest non-Greek New Testament. It's the same thing that we have written today. But do you think you can read that? I mean, you get it. I'm going to put it into a guy in Eden, North Carolina's hand and say, here you go, buddy. Have at it. Is he fixing to translate it? No. Now, how many of us are actually doubting anything in history? I mean, the thing that I hear the most is we didn't go to the moon. You didn't go to the moon, and you don't have the Bible either. Really, those are the things that we doubt the most, and Obama's birth certificate. Do we realize that we have more documentation of biblical texts than any other piece of literature? I talked to a lady in Martinsville, and she said, well, I just don't know that I can trust the Bible because it's so old. And I said, okay, ma'am, how can you trust that George Washington was the first president? Oh, I said, how do you know who the first president was? And she said, I don't know who that was. And I said, okay, do you know who George Washington was? And she said, no. And I said, well, he was the first president, but how do we know that? I mean, couldn't people by now be lying to us that George Washington really wasn't the first president, that somebody else was, but history has just somehow circumvented the truth, and now we think George Washington is the president? We don't doubt that. We don't doubt the authenticity of the Declaration of Independence. We don't doubt the philosophers who used to quote and talk about the Bible. Do you realize philosophers in the 1400s, Rene Descartes, David Hume a little bit later, these people were all talking about the Bible in the 1400s and the 1600s. You got Friedrich Nietzsche, who said God is dead. Where did he get his idea of God? We're operating on the same truth that these people have been going on throughout history. The only problem that we are having with the truth is that people look at it. The Bible would actually try to restrain some actions in our lives, and people don't like that. And then we say, well, can't be trusted. What else is that way? You know, you're losing a ball game. Your football team, you know, North Carolina Panthers are down 6 points. And everybody wants to start saying, well, rule book's messed up. We're using a rule book from the 50s, and we don't know if that can even be trusted. Now, what's this that you have, Mike? A reliability of the New Testament documents.
This is actually a list of different writings throughout history. You know, you're talking about the fact that we have more documentation of the Bible than any other of the writings. And you've got Caesar's Gallic Wars in here. The number of copies that we have of that are only 10. Plato's writings, we only have 7 copies. Herodotus, his history, there's only 8 copies. Homer in the Iliad, we have 643 copies. That's one of the largest of these secular writings. But then you get down here to the number of copies of the Bible, there's 5,366 copies of the Bible in its entirety.
Right.
And the accuracy, the percentage of the accuracy is 99%.
Okay, now, Micah, for people that are watching, he says the accuracy is 99%. Do you know what that one little percent is going to be? It's going to be the times that in different texts, John is maybe not spelled with an H. Or maybe John has 2 9s. Or maybe, you know, one word was spelled with an extra letter, something of that nature. But it is never going to be whole doctrinal error. It's just going to be, you know, like a little mark. You know, Hebrew writings, to where maybe something came out to be 6 versus something over here that came out to be 16. You know, we're looking at things that are old fragments. And so but nobody's ever shown a thing like, for instance, you have never found a biblical manuscript where the deity of Jesus is compromised.
Mm-hmm.
No, Muhammad comes up with the Quran, and it's saying that Jesus is not the Messiah, he's just a prophet. You notice that's not a biblical text. You never find any of those contradictions in the Bible, and yet, for some reason, we have all this historical evidence. And here's the thing, too. We have all these events where people have found them, but nobody's going back and doing their research. Friends, you got to do more than watch the Da Vinci Code with Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is not your Bible scholar. You need to get some books, look at the history, look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, look at the different manuscripts that we have. And then really, don't just, I mean, this is something that a young person was saying not too long ago. He's in college age, talking about those millennials again. And he just says, how do we know that somebody hasn't changed the Bible? I can't answer that. How do we know? How do you know that aliens didn't give birth to you? It's like, what are we doing? Coming up with any impossibility or something of that nature to say, well, what if this? What if this? Well, what if Brad Pitt got in a time machine and actually he wrote the Bible and then came back and gave it to everybody? We could come up with all these endless hypotheticals, but what we do know is that we live, we die. The Bible has not been contradicted. Archaeology proves things historically in the Bible, and it goes continuously without flaw. 66 books. How many Harry Potter books are there? 8? 7?
I don't know.
People read these Harry Potter books, and they're like, oh, do you know the secret behind why Lord Voldemort can't love somebody? It's because he was conceived under a love potion. You can comprehend all the intricate details of the Harry Potter series, and you can't figure out the Bible, honestly. The way people read Twilight, and they just devour those books, but then they come to the Bible and say, I just can't even figure it out. Now, friends, don't think that I'm trying to compare witchcraft and werewolves to the Bible. I'm saying you read the books. You read a lot of them. And when you come to the Bible, we say, well, who can know it? That's what Matt is saying. I'm just on a journey. John Fulcher is saying, well, we really don't know. Because after all, that book was written by men. I mean, Micah, you asked him about 1 Corinthians 13. He said, we see through a glass darkly. I said, we don't, they did. They knew in part and they prophesied in part. The perfect has come, and now we get to have the truth. And then he says, but actually, that was still written by men.
Mm-hmm.
So at what point does the Bible ever get to be infallible, that we get to know that we have the truth?
I'm really with their stance, all of it is questionable, down to Jesus actually being the Messiah. And here they are going through the Old Testament, and they weren't even doing a good job of connecting all the prophecies into the New Testament about the Messiah. But then we get over to the New Testament, and you've got people wanting to be saved, and he's telling them, okay, believe in Jesus Christ. How can we believe in Jesus Christ when this book was written by men? How do we even know that Jesus Christ really lived? Mm-hmm. How do we even really know that, I mean, for all we know, Malvester could be right.
Yeah.
That Jesus was just a man. They never really did kill him. And, you know, his body's still over there somewhere. It brings the entire system down.
Yeah. Well, and just the simple fact that we're reading the Bible, you know, we're studying the Bible, and John Fulcher has a divinity degree from Duke University, and Matt has a degree from Duke University. So why is it that they don't know simple passages like 2 Timothy 3:16, to where he said that all Scripture is inspired by God, that we would be thoroughly furnished unto good works. So I have everything that I need there, thoroughly furnished. Okay, it's the idea of a soldier who's going out to battle. He gets everything that he needs in the armory. He's fully equipped and he's ready to go. But they say, no, there's going to be some things that you're missing. All Scripture is given by inspiration of God. It's profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness. And the only time that it's not profitable to First Baptist is when it's something that's controversial. Well, why do y'all use women preachers, John Fulcher? Well, we don't even know that Paul wanted that to be read in 1 Timothy 2. Why are y'all using instrumental music? Well, back then it was this way. Why don't y'all say that baptism is for the remission of sins? Well, we really don't even know the word for baptism in the Greek. The Bible is only unreliable when we're stepping on their toes with it. When we're actually putting them beside the truth and they're falling short, that's when the Bible becomes unreliable. So, Micah, what do you think? What is there to gain by having this mindset?
Really, you lose everything.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing to gain. I mean, you can't. For people to be so upset with which I guess today not very many of them are upset, but be upset with the homosexual agenda, and for individuals like Troy, well, there's nothing your preachers can do about it. There's nothing they can do to hold back the sway, and no wonder the homosexual agenda's gotten the ground that it's gotten, because preachers today, they're not willing to actually deal with biblical texts and stand on them as if they are, in fact, accurate and true.
You think Troy could be a member at First Baptist?
I believe he could.
Okay. And that's what they have to gain. More members to give more money. We read through Amos. In Amos chapter 4, he says all the kine of Bashan, and what a kine is a cow. So he's calling all their wives cows. And one of the ladies said, can you imagine if John ever preached like Amos? She said, nobody would even come back next week. That's why they told Amos to go home and stop prophesying. But see where they are at First Baptist. You can come to the Bible class. You can drink. You can come in and listen to the pipe organ that's insured for $1 million. I asked John, what's your budget then? What's your cap limit on an organ? He said, that's none of your business. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. That's exactly what Mark White told me when I asked him, y'all have any adulterers at St. Joe Catholic Church? It's none of your business. And I said, well, you just told me that y'all do. Otherwise, you would just flat out said no. So what's the focus, y'all? Is it drinking craft beer after the good Bible study? That's not a good Bible study. Is it, second guessing the Bible and saying when you have a problem, you go to your pastor and you ask him, I'm having some trouble with this in my life. I'd like to know what you think. When are they ever going to correct somebody and say, no, the Bible says this and you need to get in line with it to better yourself?
Probably what they would do is pull out chicken noodle soup for the soul. That for them, that's probably got more insight than the Bible actually does.
Absolutely. And it's like, it's the same old stuff. Joel Osteen, feel good, Billy Graham, just think about Jesus, stuff like that. But you never get into actual things that Jesus taught. There's a reason Jesus was crucified. Now, let's get back a little bit to what our topic was. Why do they not think that the Bible's inspired? It's because they don't want to offend anybody. It's because they don't want to actually make people upset. You can't be friends with everybody. We would love to be, but it's just not going to happen. I mean, people are going to be upset by the truth. But they're also upset because they don't know the inspired message. They said Q theory, which is Mark was the original and Matthew and Luke quoted off of that. But if you look at Galatians chapter 1, around verse 10, Q theory could not be real. And if they would just read the Bible, they would realize this. I certify you, brethren, that the gospel which was preached of me is not after man. So can Mark and Luke say that when they wrote their gospel account? It's not after man. Well, not if Q theory is real. If Q theory is real, they're not with Paul on this. And really, how much of this can Paul say is not after man if something like Q theory can be real? These are very simple things. We work so hard to beat down the Bible, to not try to find the truth. But if you just look at Jeremiah chapter 1, okay, Jeremiah chapter 1, look at start at verse 5. And go down just a little bit. It's 5 to 10. But the Lord said unto me, say not, I am a child, for thou, this is verse 7, shall go to all that I shall send thee, and whatsoever I command thee, thou shalt speak. Be not afraid of their faces, for I am with thee to deliver thee, saith the Lord. Then the Lord put forth his hand and touched my mouth. And the Lord said unto me, behold, I have put my words in thy mouth. Now, he's got the message. He's inspired. Now, the things that he was going to be telling the nation of Israel, now come on. Jeremiah goes in, and I think it's Jeremiah 25:11. He tells them, 70 years you're going into captivity. How could he know that to such an exact number, 70 years? And you're going into Babylonian captivity. But John Fulcher, how's he going to answer that? How is it the case that Jeremiah could go in and know that? Do you remember, Michael, whenever you would make connections in Zechariah? Okay, you got Zechariah chapter 12, talking about the crucifixion. You said, that's John 19. And then John would say to you, well, John must have been reading Zechariah when he wrote that. Nothing was ever given to the inspiration, was it?
Which even then he said possibly.
Yeah.
And then I had to come behind him and say, no, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got, like you said, I went to John 19. I've got the forerunner of the Messiah, the one coming in the spirit of Elijah, telling us, look, well, actually, I'm sorry. I misspoke. The writer, John, is not coming in the spirit of Elijah, but he's writing about the one. But I've got an inspired individual looking back to Old Testament prophecy, and he's saying this is what was being talked about. And then you want to say possibly?
Yeah.
What good is any of this doing? It's doing nobody any good. It's allowing the Troys of the world to just run amok and cause all kind of dissension within our system, breaking down of the moral fiber. And you would think that the preachers, I mean, this goes back, Caleb, to you're bringing in that petition into class. Why haven't they already started a petition?
Yeah.
You got people in there that are sick.
Yeah, and that was, just so everybody knows, I took in a piece of paper because a lady had been talking trash about Target. So I went in next week and said, okay, well, let's be real deal about it here. Let's sign the petition that we're against Target.
Right.
Only one lady did it. And the guy who was visiting from the Christian church shouted, no, I'm not going to sign it. So they're not opposed. You know, they're not taking any action. And that lady said, it makes no sense for us to sit in the room and talk about it and not be vocal outside. At least she's getting it. You know, I think maybe reading Amos was doing some good for her, but certainly wasn't from the application they were getting. Well, what about 2 Samuel chapter 23? You know, when you start taking away the inspiration of the Bible, you kill the book. You crucify it. And that's not like a good thing. You know, it was good that Jesus was crucified for our sake, but these people are just destroying. Look at Jeremiah, or 2 Samuel, spake by me, and his word was in my tongue. Okay, same thing as Jeremiah. Now, this is why it's important. Okay, you got David, who says, the Spirit of the Lord spoke by me, and his word was in my tongue. Now, look at Psalm 110, verse 4. Okay, you've got David writing the Psalms, and the Lord has sworn and will not repent, thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. Okay, David is inspired, and David wrote that song. But when John Fulcher comes along and he says, well, we really don't know what's inspired and what's just simply of man and what they came up with, if this wasn't the truth, Psalm 110, verse 4, then what does it mean in Hebrews chapter 7 when this is brought up again? In Hebrews chapter 7, let me find the verse here. Look at verse number 1. For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, who met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings, and blessed him, to whom also Abraham gave a tenth of part of the first being of by interpretation king of righteousness, and after also king of Salem, which is king of peace, without father, without mother, without descent, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but made like unto the Son of God, abideth a priest continually. Now see that? Made like a priest unto the Son of God. This was a prophecy of the priesthood of Jesus Christ. But if it's not inspired, like John Fulcher says, then what are we going to do with it? That's how the inspiration worked. God gave them the truth. They wrote it down. Now, is that not simple? Why do we need to come up with all this stuff just to confuse each other?
And, you know, Kev, would you like a mathematical perspective as to why the Bible has to be inspired? And here we are, we're talking about prophecy.
Yeah.
So let's take a listen of, I mean, this is a case study that was done years ago, but it just shows, I mean, it builds a strong case for the fact that the Bible has to be what it claims to be based upon prophecy alone. So let's take a listen to it.
Scholars have determined that Jesus fulfilled at least 4 major prophecies, each written a minimum of 3 centuries before his birth.
Okay, 4 dozen. 48?
Yeah.
All right, 3 centuries. That's 300 years. So 48 prophecies that were made 300 years before he actually lived. I just want to make sure we got that clarification so we know what we're talking about here. That's a long span of time for something to, to come true.
Content ranged from specific details about his life to the symbolic implications of his death.
Psalm 22 gives a poetic picture by David, written in the first person, of what the Messiah will be like in his suffering. And one of the things he says is that they will pierce my hands and my feet. Now, David wrote before crucifixion was known, probably by about 300 years. As Isaiah 53 says, he was pierced through. It gives us the reason for that. He was pierced through for our iniquities.
So you have somebody prophesying about crucifixion who did not know anything about crucifixion.
Except here. So can y'all close it down and put that?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So here's somebody prophesying about crucifixion who didn't know anything about crucifixion.
Yeah.
So that again, that's like Isaiah prophesying about Cyrus before Cyrus is even born.
Yeah.
He prophesies about somebody who's not even born and even gets his name right and talks about what he's going to do.
Yeah.
So let's let this go out.
So there's a purpose. He dies not just because he's a martyr, but because he's a substitution for sin.
A college professor of mathematics and science named Dr. Peter Stoner wanted to determine what the odds were that any human being throughout history could fulfill the messianic prophecies. So he had his students come up with very conservative estimates of the likelihood of any human being fulfilling certain of these predictions. And then they just ran the numbers. And what they determined is that the odds of any human being fulfilling 48 of these ancient prophecies would be one chance in a trillion.
Now that's just 48. Jesus, there are actually over 300 prophecies made about the Messiah, but they just picked these 48.
Yeah.
And in particular, in the actual study, they picked 8. So breaking it down to just 8 in another study that they did is like spreading silver dollars across the state of Texas and stacking them several times high, and then marking one of those silver dollars with an X, and then sending a blind man into the state of Texas, and on his first try, picking the silver dollar that had the X marked on it. The chances of these things actually happening, and then they did actually happen, and they're recorded in this book over the span of time in which they were written by at least 40 different authors, and everything lines up.
Yeah. And what we started out with earlier, what other book has the documentation, has the antiquity, and has the reputation that the Bible has? You know, okay, this just for instance, I do like to read a lot of, philosophy, things like that. And so recently, I got some Ayn Rand books. And guess what? Ayn Rand was a big deal in the 60s. And guess how many people know about her now? People that I'm talking to, very few people know Ayn Rand. And if they do, they're like, yeah, I heard of him. They don't know that it's a woman. These people will come, there'll be a flash in the pan, they'll leave. And you even look at the big names in history, though. You know what Ayn Rand was actually going against? She was saying the idea taught in the Bible of being good to your neighbor, she said, is ridiculous. So why? Why does Ayn Rand feel the need to go against the Bible if it's nothing? Why did Friedrich Nietzsche feel the need to say God's dead? To get people, what's Richard Dawkins doing? The God delusion. Okay, man, Richard, if the Bible is nonsense, then just drop it. Just go do your thing and let other people do theirs. And if they want to believe it, fine. If it really doesn't make a difference, but the reason that Richard Dawkins has to fight so hard, and these other people, these other atheists, agnostics, skeptics, and even First Baptists, they're working against the Bible, is because there are things in the Bible that we just don't enjoy. Because it corrects us. Acts 2, verse 36, they were pricked in their hearts because they heard the truth. But so what? If you have to take a moment of guilt to then realize that God would love to give you salvation, then isn't that worth it? I mean, isn't that really what the gospel is supposed to do to us? And because of our own discomfort and dislike for that feeling, we're rejecting all the blessings that you could have. And the thing to think about too, if you do read the Bible, there's some bad people in the Bible. They did bad things in the Bible. And what the Bible is actually teaching us is how we get to escape those things. Dad was talking about Troy, how unhappy Troy has been as a homosexual. Troy used to pray that he would just die. he felt so bad and miserable. And I don't think it's going to get any better for Troy. And you have people like Richard Dawkins. He was, molested by his headmaster as a young boy in whatever school he was going to. And just the continuation of sin and the destruction of the family, the home life. At what point do we say, okay, we're going downhill very quickly and we would like to correct this? And when you make that decision, what do you go to? It's not going to be the Quran. It's not going to be the Book of Mormon. Because if you look at the Book of Mormon, Doctrine and Covenants 132, about verse 63, I think, it's got Emma Smith in there. Let not Emma Smith reject the command of God. How convenient that the man Joseph Smith gets a command from God to have multiple wives, and he says, and don't let your wife reject this. That's not biblically inspired. You can see right through that. All these man-made books, they're just going to continue to, for Mormonism and multiple wives. I get polytheism and polygamy. There it is.
That's polygamy, yeah.
Yeah, polygamy. That's not going to help the American family. It's not going to help any family in the world. Islam, the Quran, it's not going to help people. But if you get the Bible out and see the historical soundness, the doctrinal soundness, you're going to find good teachings about working hard, raising your children, loving your spouse, being good to your neighbor, being a good civil, law-abiding citizen. Now, what do we have to lose by reading the Bible? And why, when we come to a message that is so good and so profound, would we say, well, we really can't believe it? Ask John Fulcher. Ask his associate pastor, Matt. Friends, we're going to wrap up tonight, 12:30, and we're going to come back a little while later. Don't forget about Doug Barber. We're still going to be talking about Doug Barber and a little bit of Westover Baptist. We have not exhausted by any means our material on First Baptist over on Starling. They don't believe in water baptism. I don't know if they would correct Methodists and Catholics that sprinkle. I don't think Matt will. He's not trying to talk to the Catholics so far. We have all this recorded as they were asking us to not come back to their Bible study. Why? Because we're starting to get a little bit controversial with the truth, which is what happens. Friends, all this is simply done so that we can, tonight's episode of Micah and my portion is for, textual reliance, trusting in the Bible, seeing the good message that it is, and not letting the denominations who are just changing with the times take it away from you. You can trust this. You should not just trust what every man is saying. And if you do trust this and you start reading it for yourself, really studying, it's going to make your life better as you start trying to apply those things. But that's really the issue, is applying it. Micah, thank you for... Micah traveled from Martinsville to come do this show. So thank you, Micah, after doing an hour of TV and then coming on being with us. Thank you for being with us tonight. Friends, if you're watching, thank you also for your time and attention. Remember, always ask for, what does the Bible say? Thank you. Good night.
Views expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect the views of this